Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Thursday night. It is time for Revolutionary Change. I'm Jen Perelman.
I'm Peter Hager, and I think I've improved my lighting situation just
You're
a little
obsessed with your lighting in a way that other people are not. Nobody's
I wear
noticing.
my sunglasses at night. Of course, I'm obsessed with my lighting, Jen.
You're
Don't you
obsessed with your lighting.
Corey Hart was a pretty good musician. It's funny. We look back on, the times that we grew up that bridged the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it's amazing how, when you think about like some of the one-hit wonders, some of the guys that did music and basically everything else was not so good, even crappy for the most part, still had those one or maybe two or a few hit songs that just kind of stay with you for all those years. So here we are. And yes, I do think it's important that we look as professional as possible. I know we're a small but mighty show, but we do try our best to look as presentable as possible.
You're wearing a t-shirt.
And you're wearing a keffiyeh.
Yes, but I'm not sitting here saying we have to look as professional as possible. I mean,
Well, I mean, I could get a little bit more.
If you want, look, you could wear a suit, you could be,
I used to do that, I did do that a little bit more frequently back in the day. If you guys want to see me in a blazer and dress shirt, I can do that as well, especially on Saturday where Jen can't criticize me for how I dress.
I don't care how you dress. What do I care how you dress?
Well, thank you to the chat. They're saying we all look just fine. That's great. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm still waiting to see if I'm going to get this next house. So I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting.
What's the odds? How's it looking?
Well, it's a matter of it needs some pretty substantial floor work. And, the guy's not willing to do it. So we're going to find out exactly how much. But if it's like way a lot, then, and he's got like 3 other offers behind me. So if it's not something that we're willing to do, then someone else will.
That's true.
This is not a buyer's market. This is not, at least, I know different regions could be different, but where I am, there's very little inventory.
Limited supply. Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. If you do not have much inventory to work with, then this is what's going to end up happening. And so I think regardless of.
To whom are you referring?
Well, it's a she.
Right. To whom are you referring to? Like, are you?
I don't think I'm a she. I don't think I'm a she.
No, but I don't know if it was in reference to something that somebody mentioned. I don't know if it was in reference to me or in reference to somebody else.
People really need to get out of their head about this idea that if a person is a Jew, that automatically makes them a Zionist. And that's not true. So if you're going to come here and you're going to spew it's the Jews bullshit, then remember what Dr. King once said. Judge a person based on, we can't assume Peter's gender.
That's just funny.
Yeah, listen, people have, if it makes you feel better, if that's how you identify, and if that's what is your driving ideology, and it makes you feel complete, then so be it. That's your prerogative. That's fine. From a libertarian perspective, do whatever you want. Do not expect me to do the same. That's it. It's a pretty simple rule. And if you don't agree with it, then you're the one with the problem, not me. So with that being said, I am a male and I am 100% straight. Now, with that being said, do I think that...
I don't know, you're pretty crooked.
Regardless of what system of economics you think that we can be governed by or live within, there is always going to be supply and demand. And so how that works really just comes to what something is worth. And that's why I also think the more our currency is debased, the more that the American empire continues to crumble, the more likely that living in this country is going to resemble a lot more of where Jen is living than where a lot of the more population epicenters tend to gravitate to. It's going to become more of a barter economy is what you're looking at. What can you do for me? What can I do for you? Well, the problem is that people who do not live out in rural America, they're kind of limited with what their capabilities are. And that's not to say that people who live in cities or suburbs do not have capabilities. I'm saying that it's much less the norm and more of the anomaly. So when you're living in rural America, where your neighbor could be 2 or 3 miles away, where you're living, where the nearest gas station could be 20 miles away, and where your nearest general store supermarket could be 50 miles away. You have to know how to survive off the land. And that's not something that the average American has had to really do for the past century, give or take. Really under the start of FDR and the expanded system that came over the next several decades is what ultimately changed that. But there's still parts of the country that doesn't have internet. Did you know that?
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, you know, I support broadband for everybody, public broadband.
Yeah, public broadband was something that Bernie was pushing back in 2015, 2016. And it did seem that that was an issue that I think Trump did get on board with as well. But why don't we get anything done, Jen? Why are we stuck meandering around in a system? Why?
You mean greed, capitalism, corruption? Apparently, we're just run by a cabal of pedophiles. So I don't know. I honestly, at this point, this is just.
Let's just get it out of the way. Let's just get it out of the way. This is the most important thing going on in the United States right now. Forget everything else. Forget all the pedorasses. Forget all of the ups and downs, and mostly downs within our economic and political system. This is what matters the most, if you really care.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin.
Now, let me be very clear.
Valid point, but we're going to get to this bitch. We're going to get to this bitch.
Let's be very clear about this, because to me, this was the whole statement that really stood out above all the others that came up when Pam Bondi, the attorney, the idea that this person is the Attorney General of the United States just goes to show you it's not about qualifications.
Clearly. Now, somebody who went to a 4th-tier law school, I am not in any position to be, you know, judgy about those things. But I really have to question. And I know, like, we know someone, our friend, goes to Stetson Law. Yet I have to question if this woman has ever been exposed to things like moot court, mock trial, like, because she doesn't seem to know anything about procedure whatsoever. So I find it fascinating. You know, again, I don't know if that is that a Stetson thing? Is that she's just slept her way to the top and never really had to do anything like Kamala? Yeah, I don't know. But I will share to everybody, behold, the lying Anna Bondi. And the lying Anna Bondi has a habitat is the swamp of injustice. Her diet is tears of Epstein survivors. Her weight, 110 pounds of hot air plus 5 pounds of shit. Behavior, lying, misleading, and misrepresenting. And her hobbies are she's a Darvo enthusiast. And so for people who aren't familiar, Darvo is a classic psychotic narcissist tactic that narcissists use. And it's deny, attack, and then reverse the victim and the offender. So for people interested. So behold the lying Anna Bondi. And there is that. Thoughts?
Well, apparently she's 60 years old. I
Really?
would never. Yeah, I never.
Well, then Caroline Levitt needs to get with her and get some better tips on who's doing her lips, because this is working infinitely better. I could tell you that.
I thought you made it seem like that she was a lot younger.
Yeah, she's 60.
You made it seem like she was a lot younger and looked older. But I mean, I don't
make it. In what way did I do that?
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, what really matters here is the fact that you're looking at somebody who her ability to comprehend the law, especially when it comes to statutes regarding sexual assault, criminal behavior, regardless of status. She does not seem to be somebody who really understands much, if anything, that you're supposed to in this position. And
no, and she's extremely
why.
Defensive. This reminds me a lot of the Kavanaugh hearing, where, you know, she just cannot maintain composure. She does not answer a single question. All she does is, you know, deny and deflect and all of those things, which she was probably told to do. But, you know, she really is, you're showing your whole ass, Pam. Your whole ass. Like, you look desperate and pathetic. It's not a good look. And here's the thing. She thinks that this is going to work. She's expendable. So
the Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
What this blonde fails to mention, which is always the part of the broken capitalist system equation that no one wants to address here, is that 93% of all stock is owned by 10% of stock owners. This is not a game that is played by the average citizen. This is a game that is played by the top 20 to 10% of the population that has disposable income. Yeah, that's right.
You're addressing this thing that she brings up, right?
Yes.
But it's fucking irrelevant. Who gives a shit? She's there to talk about the Epstein files.
But this is
I don't give a shit.
I understand that, but this is what they've been living on for the longest time. They've been living on this idea that
what these people have been fucking living on the entire time, and Trump's entire campaign was exposing the Epstein files. That was what he campaigned on. So she wants to sit here and keep deflecting back to previous administrations. And yes, all of them are culpable and disgusting, but they did not campaign on releasing the Epstein files like Trump did. So she is sitting there deflecting, and you're talking about it like what she's saying is even part of the discussion. No, I don't care how any of the economy is doing. She's not there as an economic expert. She's there to fucking prosecute the people that violated all those women sitting behind her. That's her job.
Again, what I am trying to show you, though, is that this has always been their excuse. This has always been everybody's excuse. And this comes full circle to what we'll address in a minute regarding friend of the show, Lee Camp, and the statement he put out there. What it all comes down to is this. Yes, we know that this country is run by pedo-Zionist billionaires, but the economy is doing great. So ignore the rest and focus on the best. That's how she's treating this.
If this is her whole strategy. She has cards and notes or whatever for every single person that's on that committee. And when their turn comes up to question her, she doesn't listen to their question. She simply goes to what she has about them, what she has on them. And for the few people that she doesn't really have anything particular on, she pivots to things like how great the economy is doing. Again, Darvo, toxic narcissism, and she's an idiot. Because at the end of the day, they're going to hang her out to dry. My question for y'all is, who do you think is going to resign first, her or the Cuntosaurus gnome? This one or that one?
It's too heavy now. It's too heavy because we're going to show you guys more of how this went down, led by Thomas Massie. But here we go.
We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan. Committee.
No, we're not, Pam. She is just showing her whole ass is out there. You have no substance. You obviously don't understand procedure. I am fascinated with people that were litigators that have gotten to this point and yet have no concept of procedure. And it isn't that she doesn't know, right? Like, she knows. She's just told and ordered and directed to act like that, to be a distraction and to act out of line and keep everybody like chasing their tail so that she doesn't have to answer the question.
I'll be addressing Howard Lutnick on Saturday night, guys, just so you know. Howard Lutnick admitted that he has been to Epstein's Island with his family, not just himself, brought his wife and kids to the island. So there's that.
And swears that there was nothing sordid about that. And that everything was fine. And they were together the whole time with their nannies.
If there is an image that perfectly captured Bondi's disastrous deposition, it's this. this is the image that should always last. A woman who clearly made her career the priority and threw a whole bunch of sex crime victims under the bus. But you know, Jen, I have to believe that Bondi probably has experiences similar to these women.
We all have, Peter. We all have. You will not find an adult woman that has not been violated in some capacity, some minor, some severe, like these women here. It's a spectrum. But this bitch knows that. She absolutely knows that. And you know what? And I was watching Sabby earlier, and she addressed this. And, you know, I'm going to have to agree with her. There is something about women that sell out other women. The women that, like Ghislaine Maxwell, the people that sell out other women to be abused by men. It's really, you know, I mean, you have it in every group. Every group has their people that sell out their own, you know, in every conflict. But this is one of those women. And what's interesting is I believe she comes from something groomed as well. She's coming from some sort of environment where she's been groomed, because clearly she has not gotten to where she is based on her legal skills, and her, you know, I'd say political acumen is not exactly why she's gotten where she is. So chances are she knows a lot about what these girls have gone through, because she probably had to put up with a lot of that to get to where she is. She knows it.
Friend of the show, Lee Camp, if you guys haven't seen, it was written a few days ago. I'm not going to, you know, obviously we're not going to pull up the whole thing, but the gist of what he was talking about, which is ostensibly what we're going to talk about with Moe how do you say your name again? Moe Tkacik? Moe Tkacik, or how do you?
Tkacik.
Tkacik. Okay, I did say.
Yeah, the K is just silent. The first K is just silent.
Yeah, and I think, and what people need to understand about why we'll say the ringleader of all of this, Les Wexner, has been able to facilitate this operation, and why none of the dominoes have fallen. Now, do all roads lead to Wexner? Maybe they do. But at the end of the day, why don't any of the dominoes fall? It's pretty simple, because we are living in a capitalist system. And those at the very top that basically control the market, that control global markets, are in control of the levers of power. And if you were to knock them over, you would knock over the entire system, which is why people like Bondi can sit in front of a congressional hearing and say, well, if we prosecute one, we got to prosecute all, and that would break the whole system. Don't threaten us with a good time.
And you know what? And the amount of people that I have seen on all sides of the political spectrum that have said the same thing, which is we want them all prosecuted. All of them. We don't care what their affiliation is. We don't care what their affiliation is. And I do know, and I see somebody in the chat talking about, there were absolutely boys that were violated and abused and molested by these animals. Absolutely there were. I'm referencing women to women because, and I don't know if people are aware, but this still photo was during Pramila Jayapal's questioning of Pam Bondi. And Pramila Jayapal specifically asked the Epstein victims to stand up and ask them, how many of you have been able to communicate with the Attorney General, have not been contacted by the Attorney General? And they all raised their hands. They have all tried to be able to talk about their case, and she hasn't communicated with any of them. And that's why I'm saying women, not because I don't think that boys were involved in this situation, because they were.
And we're going to get to that in a little while. Now you're going to see the man of the hour, the best, in my opinion, regardless of where you stand politically, the best congressional representative we have going on Capitol Hill.
Documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Pam Bondi was a prosecutor, right? She was a prosecutor. She has been in the criminal justice system. She has prosecuted all probably ranges of offensive. And now she is the top prosecutor for this country. She knows damn well that you're not allowed to do that. This isn't some new thing just because it's the Epstein files as far as releasing names of victims. That's the fucking law. She knows it. That's how it works. That's victims' laws. But people like her further abuse these survivors. And I'm going to stop calling them victims. They're not victims. But like people like her want to continue to victimize these people.
I can remember all the way back in 2003, and I know I'm doing a real throwback here, but look, I remember the Kobe Bryant rape trial very well. And his attorney, Miss Mackey, made it a habit deliberately to name the victim in court. And as a result, they eventually dropped the case.
That's
because we all know in the celebrity obsessed culture that we live in, and people who love somebody like Kobe Bryant unconditionally when he was alive, that it didn't matter if he was guilty or not. It mattered that they loved him for his talent and you were going to ruin him. So who the hell knows what type of threats she had to deal with. People have a right to a fair trial. And again, I don't know what the legal term is when you scurry the law and you break, it's not attorney-client privilege, but there's something to be said for protecting victims in sexual violence cases.
Okay, first of all, I don't know. And all right, so that's one of those things where it's a state law. I don't know what the federal law is specifically regarding victims.
This was in Colorado.
Okay, then that would be whether or not they have like, rape shield laws, and there's certain types of things that are put in place in some places. But generally speaking, we don't release names of people that are victims of crime, especially in cases that have yet to be prosecuted. See, that's the whole point, Pam. She knows it. Oh my God, that dumb bitch.
And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files. But he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking.
She is like, it's really, we're in this bizarro world. Like you would think, based on the demeanor of some of these people, and not just these people, but people I see all over, you would think that that's what we were talking about. And at the end of the day, the whole corruption charges against Milikowski have to do with corruption, just 6 figures of corruption. We are not talking about that here. Like, this is insane that we are having a discussion as to releasing names of people that are predators. There's a reason we have a sex offender registry. It's so we all get to know them. I saw somebody said about defendants have a right to face their accuser. Yes. Once there's a trial, that's the point. They can do that in a trial. We don't even have charges yet. And she knows better than to do that.
Well, does she?
Well, absolutely.
Not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need, that you're holding on to and over redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer?
Because you're not answering.
Let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from
about
I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So
Yes.
I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman,
Because I
may I
have
give
another
my answer
question.
on that?
Here's
It's a political
the question.
joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his
Chairman,
next question.
it's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question.
You can give
Within
me-
40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes
You
of me catching you red-handed.
Red-handed.
That's the best. That's the best. She acts like it was just an oversight and everything just got up there eventually. You know, they were just, no, she got busted. And then it took them 40 minutes to put it up.
This is going to be the biggest question of all, which everyone is going to demand an answer to or should demand an answer to. Why was Les Wexner's name redacted forever and only under the threat of subpoena and prosecution did you release his name? That's a question that somebody's going to have to answer for. And we're going to get into that with Moe. Because in my opinion, Wexner, he's the top of the food chain.
Well, he's the source of the money that basically started the Epstein empire.
Yeah.
He was the money seed that spawned.
And this goes back, and this goes back 4 or 5 decades. Like, this is not something that just started. It's been going on for a very long time. And when you consider the line of work that he was involved in, like a number of people were saying in the posts that we put out earlier today, I'll never look at runway shows the same again. And nor should you. Nor should you.
I'm disgusted by everything. But you know what, though? And this is for people like that know what women, and then even more particularly women that are in modeling, what they've gone through to get to certain places. Like people, like we've known about this. Okay. Sure. The women folk have known all about this for years. This is sort of like, I feel it's akin to, you know, when now you have white people being shot in the streets and all of a sudden people are like, oh my God. And Black people are like, yeah, welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah.
That's kind of like this. That's like this. Okay. The women folk have been dealing with this bullshit for years.
And in many ways, and we'll finish it out. In many ways, this is where somebody like Bondi is on the same level as somebody like Maxwell. Women end up getting so much more done against other women that men could never hope to do on their own. They need that go-between that presents somewhat of a disarming situation, which is what the women represent that are bringing the victims into the equation. Well, Pam Bondi's no victim. She is a predator just like everybody else. Yeah. She was predatory for her career, and she was predatory against those who stood in the way of her achieving what she wanted to with her career. But let me assure you, that career is going down the fucking drain very fast, as it should. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, if it's Massie and Kana who are going to join forces, she should be brought to justice as far as I'm concerned. She has been covering for this entire operation. But as she said, I don't know if she says it in this clip, but as she has said, if we take one, we'll take them all. Good. Take them all. This system's broken. We need a new fucking system. That's the bottom line. We'll continue.
one redaction out
Where
of
he's
over
listed as a
4,700,
co-conspirator.
and we invited you
Gentlemen.
in. This guy has Trump
Gentlemen.
derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Gentlemen,
You need to
time
get
out.
on
I want you to watch
these
the video.
matters.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information.
There's one thing I can say before we finish this, is that you are looking at two people moving in completely opposite directions of where the political winds are moving for the betterment of humanity. On the left side, you have somebody who truly gives a shit, and you have somebody on the right who couldn't give a shit no matter what you tried. And hopefully, we are moving in the direction of a true America First movement, and the man on the left is leading it, and the person on the right is as anti-American as it gets. If you hold those values, hold these truths to be self-evident, the only person who's doing that is Congressman Massie, and Attorney General Bondi is a goddamn criminal of the worst kind. She is a sex predator of children protector.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We've known for years, and this is not new, that white women, and particularly privileged white women, are a problem. They're a problem against progress. They're a problem in terms of, they were a problem in terms of like civil rights. I mean, it's a problem. And there is a particular thing about her in particular, because she's also very stupid. And I'm gonna say why I think she's very stupid. She clearly has no concept of history. If she would just go back and look at history, I'm telling you, Pam, okay, it's always the lawyer that gets taken down. The lawyer always takes the fall. That's you. That's you. If anybody is going to go down for this, it's you and Cash. Yeah. That's it. And she's sitting there doing their bidding like it's just so great. She's the one. Whenever there's a scandal, it's always the guy in the lawyer's position that ends up in the problem.
Correct.
Just saying.
Information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
this
when
is
you don't,
bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way
This
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do.
Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Oh my God.
Attorney General Bondi.
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Because she doesn't like the answer. Yes, that's the problem. She doesn't like the answer. There was no answer because you don't have an answer. And again, this is someone, when somebody goes down for the cover up, it's going to be her. That's what, so she does not realize how expendable she is.
No, but even if she does, what they're only concerned about, it's kind of like I hate using him as a gargantuan reference, no pun intended, but even somebody like Randy Fine, the way I see it, they only play their cards if they know that they have an exit strategy, if they have an off ramp. So even if Bondi is going to be the fall person in this situation, there is a high likelihood that she's already got something lined up for herself, if that is the case. But the one thing that Trump and his administration has proven, they don't cast anybody aside. They are defiant to the very end, that they'll hang on to anybody, no matter how toxic they are. The idea that Kash Patel is still the head of the FBI is negligence of treasonous proportions. But it doesn't matter because the three-letter agencies are not working on behalf of the American people. They're working on behalf of corporate special interests, anyone with a brain, and Israel, but they're all one and the same. If you knew that, then there wouldn't really be anything to argue, now would there? In the end, I believe she falls. How hard is she going to fall? Time will tell. But in my opinion, she is on borrowed time. One of the very few, but...
All right, maybe see the extinction of the lying Anna Bondi. It could happen. You never know. She's not, I mean, she's definitely going to be one of the people that they cut loose. I don't know. I kind of feel like it's going to be a toss-up between her or Noam, which one of them is going to get like out, you know, kind of hung out to dry first. Not sure.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this ultimately ends up unfolding. But the reason why this becomes such a central focus in everything that we talk about and why this is such a prominently big problem, and it's only going to get worse, is because we know that if you are not going to deal with the Israel problem, it is going to create a vacuum that is going to get so much worse for so many people. When one asks themselves, why did we invade Venezuela? Why did we do regime change in Venezuela? This is why we did regime change in Venezuela. And I want everyone to know one of the things that we typically do on our channel is that we like to focus on the headlines and the stories from the pro-Israel perspective in terms of how they sell it to their people. What are they selling?
Well, I like to show both because there's usually this vast contrast between how a story is presented to everybody else and then in the Hasbara.
Well, in the Hasbara, we now know that Venezuela, if there was a universal truth between the difference, if there was a singular difference between what Machado is now doing versus what Maduro was doing, and you could go back to the days of Che Guevara if you want, be it as it may, Venezuela was not doing business with Israel, hence not doing business with the United States.
You mean Chavez? You mean Hugo Chavez?
Yes, Hugo Chavez. I said Che Guevara by mistake. Point, well, 6 1/2 dozen of the other. Point B.
Right, they're all the same. It's all the same. Yeah, it's all the same.
You know, I'm just a gringo who thinks all Latinos are the same. But with that being said, they didn't do business with Israel, and they didn't want to. And Maduro came right out, like Jen did, days after October 7th, 2023, and said, it's all a ruse. Do not trust anything that Israel says. They are liars. They are going to commit genocide. They did, and he was proven right, no matter what you think of him. And let's keep in mind, why is it that things are so economically difficult in Venezuela? Because we sanction the ever-loving shit out of that country. And they cannot catch a break. Why? Why do you think, ladies and gentlemen, why is it that we give such hell, fire, and brimstone to the country that is Venezuela? Because they have the largest supply of crude oil under their soil in the world. And they don't want to give it to us. They want to work with us. They've offered to do business with us many times. That's not good enough. We don't want to do business with them. We need to own them. Because that's the only way to maximize profits for American oil companies. If they give benefits to their people, that means that our companies can't screw over their people to benefit
their shareholders.
Correct.
So this is what we're dealing with. If they just do business with them, then those oligarchs would have to pay a fair price, and they wouldn't be able to make, like a 3,000% profit. So we can't have that.
Venezuela sends first oil shipment to Israel in years in sign of relations improving, according to Bloomberg.
Is that Bloomberg the publication or Bloomberg the person?
No.
Either way, it's wrong.
The publication. Israel's Bazan Group will be responsible for transporting the cargo, according to the report, although authorities have not publicly disclosed this. Here's my question. How do the Venezuelan people feel about this? What's their opinion?
Well, what the Jerusalem Post will probably not report the opinion of the regular people. They'll report the opinion of the wealthy white Venezuelans who were supportive of the whole regime change. So if they do quote Venezuelans, it will only be people from the opposition. It won't be people that were in the majority that elected Maduro.
Venezuela sets its first shipment of crude oil to Israel in several years, according to a Tuesday report by Bloomberg. The shipment represents a renewal of contacts between the Venezuelan government and Israel ever since former Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez cut relations in 2009.
Renewal of contracts. See that? Renewal of contracts.
What's the difference between when Hugo Chavez took over versus now?
No, but what I would like to say is what they call a renewal of contracts is us going in, kidnapping a democratically elected leader and imposing our will on the new leader with the threat of it happening to her as well. And then they're calling it a renewal of contracts. No, that's not a renewal of contracts. That's bullying and basically extortion. So, whatever.
According to people familiar with the deal, Israel's Bazan Group will be responsible for transporting the cargo. The report also notes that the deal was not made public, which aligns with Israel's policy of not revealing the sources of its crude oil imports. Well, you would think that that's kind of public information now, but hey, everything is done under the cover of night with that psychopathic genocidal state. The last shipment of oil from Venezuela to Israel consisted of 470,000 barrels, according to KPLER data shared by Bloomberg. That's a lot of crude oil. Israel-Venezuela authorities aim to restore relations. The news comes after Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar met with Nobel Prize laureate. How do you say that? Laureate and Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado on February 4th. Maria Corina Machado is a courageous woman, and her struggle is a source of inspiration to many in Venezuela and beyond. We discussed developments in Venezuela since the historic U.S. operation Absolute Resolve, led by President Trump. Hey, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is cheering in the streets right now.
Oh, God.
I wish the people of Venezuela that they may soon be able to choose their leadership in free elections. You mean like after we remove them illegally?
They have free elections. Not only do they have free elections, but international observers who monitor elections, like people like Jimmy Carter did and his organizations at Free and Fair Elections. The Venezuelan electoral system is more fair than ours in terms of that the will of the populace is more likely represented in the decisions. Whereas here we know that it's not. We know that the will of the people is not represented in our results of our elections. So they actually have more fair elections than we do. That's what's and we're sanctioning them.
And didn't Jimmy Carter verify that Maduro was democratically elected?
Absolutely, he was democratically elected. The majority of people in Venezuela like him.
Just like they like Scheinbaum, in Mexico.
Well, look, I mean, Maduro is a Chavista, and he's one of what they consider to be the Bolivarian revolutionaries. And those are the people that do make up the majority of the voting population in Venezuela. And they did vote for Maduro. And so imagine how infuriating this must be to them, which is why this is never going to work for any amount of time. You're not going to be able to, like, it's just not going to work for any amount of time.
Dear Minister Sahar, I am truly grateful for the opportunity to engage in an extensive conversation about the challenges and opportunities we face in a process that is already moving Venezuela toward democracy. I tell you, that word doesn't mean shit anymore, does it?
No.
Our country will be a reliable and stable partner for the world's democracies and will offer major opportunities for investment and exchange. Venezuela's reintegration into the democratic world will also allow us to build global alliances in the face of those who threaten our security. Let me ask you this. Who in the flying fuck in the global economy wants to do business with these people? That's my question. Like, who is lining up to do business with a country that if you don't go along with what the corporate special interests want, we will simply remove you or assassinate you, and then we'll force you to put in a puppet president like Maria Machado? Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, this is how this is going, but the rest of the world is, you know, I think that we're seeing things changing. We don't see it as much here because it doesn't get the coverage, but the rest of the world is really sick of our shit. They are. They're sick of our shit. And yeah, it does appear that for now, Venezuela seems like it's bullied into complying with the empire in terms of doing business with the genocide. Okay, like it seems like that. But I do not see any longevity to this to these relations, okay? Because the woman that is in charge right now in Venezuela, who was the vice president under Maduro, is a Bolivarian revolutionary descendant. Like this is somebody who ultimately is not with empire. So whatever coercion or whatever threats or whatever they're doing to force their hand will only work for so long. That's what I think. And I think eventually it's just not going to, whether it disintegrates into like a whole bunch of civil war in Venezuela, or I don't know how it works, but this isn't going to just work. Like all of a sudden now everybody's going to just start having, we're going to bully the trade and just control Venezuela like a colony. So it's not going to work for long.
We, as you requested, are going to show what an opposite opinion is. And this is from the Palestine Chronicle. Fabricated. Venezuela.
Okay, by the way, wait, before you read this, I haven't seen either of these articles. I'm just saying based on that I know that there's a majority and that the opposition is a minority, that the narrative we're getting is bullshit. That's what I know. So I haven't seen this yet. So this will be interesting to see if I was somewhat accurate.
Fabricated. Venezuela rejects Bloomberg's claim of oil shipment to Israel. Very interesting. Venezuelan official Miguel Perez Pereira publicly denied the alleged shipment, labeling it fake news. Venezuela has rejected a Bloomberg report claiming the country exported crude oil to Israel, calling the story fabricated and unsupported, while the agency maintained a narrative based largely on anonymous sources and indirect indicators. So the key developments: Venezuelan official Miguel Perez Pereira publicly denied the alleged shipment. Bloomberg reported a first crude oil cargo to Israel in years after the supposed capture of Nicolas Maduro. The article relied on unnamed sources. Israeli authorities and the Bazan refinery declined to comment. Well, you would think if they were telling the truth that they would probably say, hey, we got the oil right here. Here it is. Here's proof. Venezuelan authorities dismissed as false a report claiming Caracas exported crude oil to Israel, stating that no official evidence supports the allegation, Telesur reported on Wednesday. Miguel Perez Perilla, the secretarial vice president for communication and culture, published a screenshot of the article marked fake and accused the report of spreading disinformation intended to undermine the country's sovereignty and stability. Officials stressed that the claim contradicts Venezuela's political position and diplomatic record, noting that the relations with Israel were severed in 2009 and that Caracas has consistently expressed support for Palestine in international forums. The rejection addressed both the alleged shipment and the broader political narrative contained in the report, which authorities described as factually incorrect. Now, keep in mind, this is Michael Bloomberg's organization, so nothing surprises me coming out of that Zio scum's.
Yeah, but I mean, the case in point is, like, my thought is, even giving the benefit of the doubt that the story is correct and they did do it, it's under duress. It's not something that they're doing willingly, really happily and voluntarily. So if we're bullying them into doing it, so now it appears that they're now claiming that the whole story is fake and that they did not ship oil to Zio Hell. Is that what this is? Because that doesn't surprise me either, because I am very surprised that, and I cannot remember her name, was cooperating to the level that they're claiming she was cooperating when I know.
That's it. You are you're referring to the Venezuela vice president. Let me just grab her name.
When you say it, I'll remember.
Nelcy Rodriguez.
Okay,
so
yes.
What I think people are missing here, which is very important, is that they only captured Maduro. Okay, they only captured Maduro. You forgot the fact that it was his elected government that's still there. You think that they're just going to arbitrarily go along with whatever the hell we say? Are you nuts? That's why they're saying, we didn't do this. I know you're thinking that we're projecting this. Oh, our relationship with Israel is great. We hate them. We don't want anything to do with them. And if that means more bloodshed, so be it. We are not giving in to your demands. So as Bloomberg,
you see the psyop, though, right? The whole psyop is so Trump and his goons get some amount of like credibility, or they've achieved something by removing Maduro. And so now all they have to do is wag the dog and pretend that they actually achieved something strategic, which would be Israel being able to do business with Venezuela. So they made that portion up. So this is all this is the operation that we're dealing with here. And now it's not even, so it's all absurd. So I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that they didn't do it, and that it's not that she's being bullied or coerced or whatever.
Bloomberg reported on Tuesday that Venezuela was sending its first crude shipment to Israel in years, allegedly destined for the Bazan Group refinery, Israel's largest oil processor. According to the agency, the information came from people with knowledge of the deal who requested anonymity because that matter was not public. The shipment would mark the first such cargo since 2020. The report also claimed that oil trade routes shifted after what is described as the capture of President Maduro by U.S. forces and Washington's takeover of Venezuelan oil sales, an assertion Venezuelan officials rejected outright. Bloomberg added that Israel does not disclose crude suppliers and that tankers sometimes disappear from digital tracking systems near its ports. What do they end up in the Bermuda Triangle? Neither the Israeli Energy Ministry nor the refinery commented.
So that, this is none of this is surprising.
Anonymous sources, a central element of the report, relied on unidentified individuals familiar with the supposed agreement. The agency also referenced maritime tracking gaps and past data from an energy analytics firm, Kepler, as support its claim. Venezuelan officials criticized this approach, arguing the indirect indicators and anonymous testimony cannot replace verifiable documentation such as shipping records, port confirmations, or official statements. Authorities said the narrative illustrates how speculation and partial data can be presented as confirmation. Political and diplomatic context. The dispute unfolded within a broader political context shaped by Venezuela's long-standing position towards Israel. Caracas cut diplomatic ties in 2009 following Israel's military operation in Gaza. I thought everything started after October 7, 2023. Again, I was told wrong. And has repeatedly declared support for Palestinian rights. Venezuelan leaders have consistently condemned Israeli military actions and framed their foreign policy as aligned with global South solidarity movements. Officials therefore argued that claims of an oil shipment contradict both declared policy and diplomatic practice.
That's what I would have, I mean, that's what made most sense to me, which is why I was like, if they did that, it was not free will. And I do agree that, yeah, I saw you guys talking about that you appreciate us sort of showing you the same story from two different narratives. And I do think that's really important. And I do try to point out aspects of media literacy here when I think that it's relevant. Fortunately, both Peter and I have journalism somewhat background, so we have that going for us. But the other way that we help with media literacy is bringing on people that are actual journalists. We bring on actual journalists that do real reporting. I mean, like, people put on our comments, I see people saying, especially for you Saturday night, great reporting and da-da-da. And we do, in a sense, of put things together and do analysis and that stuff. But from someone who went to journalism school, I always think when you say reporting, I think, you know, original sources and really doing deep dives and stuff like that. And so those are people we usually bring on, like tonight's guest.
Moe Tkacik, Tkacik, is that?
Tkacik.
Tkacik.
Just the K is silent. Why is that so hard for you?
Coleman, the D is silent.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, need to get hysterical, Spartacus. We're just, it's Tkacik. It's the K is silent.
She is an investigative journalist at the American Prospect and has been on our show once before. It's been too long. Moe Tkacik, welcome back to Revolutionary Change.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. I am so sad that I missed that part about Venezuela and Israel, because the Israel lobby has been driving so much of the regime change. I mean, they're in lockstep, right? You're down in Florida, so you know better than anyone. Yeah. But I was so shocked to figure out when I was working on a story about Aurora, Colorado, that the entire narrative that Aurora, Colorado was being had been invaded and infiltrated by Tren de Aragua, was concocted out of Broward County, this little crisis PR firm called Banyan, that's just run by AIPAC and ex-AIPAC and Foundation for the Defense of Democracies and ADL people. Just and they had also done an enormous project to, in opposition to the Iran deal back in the day. But this was basically what they did. And they just happened to be working for this Chabad, these Chabad slumlords, and who had originally been based in Broward County, but then they went off to and Brooklyn, and then they started buying apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado, and then the interest rates went up, and they started neglecting those properties, and some bad guys moved in. There was definitely crime happening in these buildings, and but to elevate it to a full-fledged invasion that justifies using the Alien Enemies Act, that was the diabolical genius of this PR firm and Stephen Miller, really.
I was just gonna say Stephen Miller, and he's Goebbels. This is just, we're watching some crazy, he's almost reincarnated Goebbels.
Moe, did you know that Miller's wife went to Cypress Creek High School in Weston, Florida? And Jen has quite a...
That was in my district before I moved, but yeah, she's from Weston, Florida. Katie Miller.
She sounds, all of the stories of her in high school and college are just they're chilling, right? Because the girls, I went to UPenn, so I went to school with a lot excuse me. Did I mention I went to the Wharton School of Business at UPenn? Did you go to the Wharton School of Business? Of course I didn't go to the fucking Wharton. Of course you didn't go, because you're not as smart as me.
So I
no,
grew
and
up
I
with
dropped
those
out because
people.
I knew, because I was around so many Wharton people all the time, that I wasn't going to make enough money as a journalist to like justify, taking out loans. My dad like lost his job my sophomore year, and I was just like, okay, no, fuck this, because it's not about school. Going to a school like that, and I think that probably, I think Cornell is probably this way. I think like, a lot of like sort of elite schools are like this. Like, it's not about the classes at all. And, normal kids don't really understand that. But kids like Katie Miller do. And so she really understood from a really early age how power works. And though she seems dumb as opposed in a lot of, or just, so intellectually incurious that she doesn't come off as being particularly intelligent.
Nope.
She she could go far.
Well,
The
that's
one thing I
that-
will say, the one thing I'll say about her is she is a prime example of why Florida is like 48th in education. You know what I mean? Like you really see from someone like her, because she graduated from public high school in Florida. So she is the product of Florida's education system. So yeah, I agree. There's something off there.
Yeah, but you don't have to be smart to ascertain power. That's not a prerequisite. It never has.
No,
been.
you have to be sociopathic. That's the only seemingly connective thing amongst all these people is they're sociopaths.
And speaking of sociopathic behavior, you think about everything that's coming out now regarding the Epstein files, and obviously you've been diving deep into this for a while. But to me, the central figure in all of this is definitely Leslie Wexner. I believe that he is the person that has been behind this from day one. Looking back on this story that I'm hearing more about, as I'm sure you are as well, he was the leader of the Jew Crew, as it was known, a group of affluent predators in the 1970s and 1980s, particularly in Chicago, that were sexually abusing underage boys, primarily in, I guess, Catholic dioceses. And this was just something that went on for a very long time. That's just one of many layers. And then you look into the fact that he was in charge of Victoria's Secret, which I'm sure has been nothing short of a grooming organization for many years. So where is your jump off point when it comes to somebody like Les Wexner? And do you believe that he in many ways is the ringleader of this entire clandestine U.S.-Israel operation, as Whitney Webb so eloquently puts it, one nation under blackmail?
Well, he's certainly more important than we have been led to believe, right? And this whole idea that why he would sign over his fortune to Jeffrey Epstein, there's a reason, right? I mean, there was a reason he needed to do that. For some reason, somebody was making him do that. He had this fortune. He had all these mob ties. He had been implicated in a real grisly murder of his accountant, I believe, in the 80s. The Columbus Police Department had been doing a really heroic job trying to trace the links between these organized crime figures. He was deeply embedded in this organized crime crew that controlled commercial real estate and the mall business in the United States. And, if you're looking for, I mean, this is the really troubling thing. If it's the 80s or the 70s and the 80s, and you are looking for prepubescent and pubescent victims, where do you go, right? Like and that's one of the things that that I really feel like is so sort of uncovered here, because there was a very clear strategy that they used when they launched a brand. And the strategy was to sort of create this sort of cult-like following around the brand, and get and introduce kind of sex into the equation, and try and sort of, get kids to work at their mall stores because they were so attracted to the image and the sexuality of the whole brand. And I'm thinking, particularly Abercrombie and Fitch is what became so famous for having done that. And Abercrombie and Fitch
Forever 21 is another one that comes to mind.
Right. And that, and that was, again, and also obviously they're taking advantage, they're, one of the things that is really important here, obviously, is the limited brands were the first really big vertically integrated, entirely 100%, outsourced clothing brands. So they had, they were building factories in China, but they weren't sourcing from individual brands like a department store. The margins were so much higher if you could just sort of design your own clothes, build your own brand, and pay $5 a piece for stuff that, and sell it for 40. They were experts at creating distance between themselves and the sweatshops that they were using to manufacture these clothes. They were experts at labor exploitation and exploitation generally. And with Abercrombie and Fitch, I remember getting really deep in that story when I worked at the Wall Street Journal as a retail reporter. They made the kids buy $300, $400 worth of clothing just to sort of walk through the door. And and the kids would almost never make back the amount of money that they spent on their clothes, because they didn't get, the model also required them to, hire so many kids and make sure that all of them were attractive, that a lot of kids would only get 4 hours a week. But underneath all of that, underneath this kind of cult, and it was extremely discriminatory, unbelievably racist. I mean, the kinds of racism that you would hear about from Abercrombie and Fitch regional managers, the comments that they would that they would repeat to me were like nothing. I was working on this story back in 2001, 2002. It was like nothing I'd ever heard. It was the type of racism that I really it seemed like something from the 20s. But it was very apparent because the stores oftentimes had no, non-white employees working there. Or all of their non-white employees were literally working in the back room,
Right.
stocking, and they weren't actually allowed to be up front and be the face of the brand. Well, underneath all of this, right, this really, this vast edifice of created insecurity and brand cultishness and racism and bad vibes and labor exploitation, you also had a massive sex trafficking ring, right? And this came out, way after the Epstein stuff started to blow. This is a company, this is all run by the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, who was an extremely eccentric and crazy kind of closeted gay man. But he had been personally sort of plucked from obscurity to build this brand by Les Wexner and himself. It was all happening in New Albany and Columbus, kind of concurrently with the Epstein scheme. And they were using all of the same sort of strategies, but it was more preying on young men. It wasn't, that Mike Jeffries, the CEO, was gay. And Les Wexner, gay. So there is, there are, I think that's one of the reasons that Wexner has not been, featured that prominently so far in our, in the narrative that we understand of Epstein, because he had a different group of victims. And men are, and this sort of goes also for a lot of stuff that happened after the non-prosecution agreement, right? So there was this whole other set of victims. Most of the victims that we are familiar with, the ones that are standing behind Pramila Jayapal, and there's about 20 that have come out and been on TV and told their story, told at least a little bit of their story. And they're almost all American. They're almost all American born. They encountered Epstein either through Ghislaine in Manhattan, or working retail there, or they were scouted at the middle school near his home in Palm Beach. But there's like these other whole universes of victims coming from Russia and Moldova and Romania and Slovakia and Slovenia, who haven't told their side of the story. And why is that? Well, I mean, a lot of that is because over when these women come to New York, they are, they come on tourist visas. They don't have any way of making money. They can't go bartend. They can't go, work in a restaurant like any normal gorgeous girl in Manhattan. They are, and they're sort of subject. They're at the mercy of these agents that brought them over. People like Jean-Luc Brunel, who was of course a huge finder of Victoria's Secret. So there is, there's a whole universe of victims, and these women generally got in a little deeper. Maybe they were also recruited other girls, maybe they are afraid that, they aren't pure victims. They stayed too long. They weren't able to break free. They're still scared. And there's a lot of names that we know, but we haven't really gotten a great sense of what all we know about how that operation worked is from the American girls who witnessed it. And one of Leon Black's, because I think that Leon Black is likely also pretty deep into this organization. And one thing about Leon Black that I'm not sure are you aware of Leon's father?
No.
Leon's father, Eli Black, was a titan of industry, of the sort of early private equity business model of buying up a bunch of companies with borrowed money, essentially, and they would always buy a bunch of different companies in completely different sectors because there were pretty strict anti-merger laws at the time. And Eli Black, he was a rabbi. He was he was a very prominent Zionist. But he, his passion was, accounting, and this kind of early, this early form of private equity deal that, was, sort of adjacent to kind of the mob. They were a little bit, they were like mafia bust outs, but legal, right? Is pretty much the business he was in. So he purchased a bunch of companies, a huge meatpacking plant, and then he purchased United Fruit. So, extremely famous, sort of, CIA entrenched, company. And he, this was in the 70s, I believe, that he purchased it. So sort of past its prime, and the Central American countries were getting together and doing something that they really, should have done already, which was agree on for tourism, especially, which was agree on a unified tariff regime, where they were going to have a common regional tariff on the bananas, and that way, they were going to be able to fund their social safety nets and education systems and stuff like that, and they weren't going to allow competition to undermine that. And Eli Black bribed a some kind of like a warlord, I want to say in Guatemala, but it could be at Honduras. He bribed somebody who eventually became prime minister, as it happens, to back out of the tariff regime, and he spent a lot of money on that bribe. I want to say it was like $2 million. You know, it was a big deal. And it was the 70s. We were, you know, super woke back then. Somebody caught wind of this. There were congressional hearings, and he came under scrutiny. This is when they actually passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Anyway, this is going on. Eli Black commits suicide by walking out of his like 44th story office window, breaking through the window and walking out with his briefcase, and you know, falling 44 stories.
When was that? When was that?
This like 75.
Okay.
About 75. So that it's either 75 or 77, but I think it's 75. Anyway, that happens. Everyone, no, it's there's nothing, you know, it looks a little suspicious, but it's definitely suicide. He was definitely feeling depressed over this, you know, this scandal, which is like, okay. Eli Black was some kind of asset himself. Somebody killed Eli Black. That's just that's not a normal way to kill yourself. It's, you know, if you're depressed people, you know, I mean, you know, you got to go through the glass. But it's such a similar tale to the one that Ghislaine had about her own, her own father, you know, was this like, you know, Mossad super spy, you know, like absolutely like 40-year asset to Israel and to the United States as well, and to the whole kind of Western, you know, hegemony. And then, you know, he asks, like, he gets in financial trouble. He asked them to bail him out. I think that he asked for $400 million or something like that. It was a little bit too much. And they said, okay, no, fuck you. We're like, goodbye. This is what happens to assets. And the same thing then, of course, happens to Jeffrey Epstein. But I think that there is like an extra sadism and nihilism among, you know, people who sort of are reared thinking that they're like extremely special and extremely, you know, like blessed in some way, and then get discarded just like any old trash. And I do feel like there's something about the way that Ghislaine operated, and like, and Epstein was a lot more, the way that Ghislaine operated and the way that that Leon Black operated. They were just so they just really did believe that that their victims were trash, were like human refuse, you know?
Well, that's an example of exactly the type of treatment that you see constantly from this cabal of Zionist Jews who constantly talk about Palestinians like they're not human. Like, oh, you know, 80,000 here, 100,000 there. And then you see what happens in DC with the two Israeli Jewish nationalists that were gunned down, apparently, and the whole world had to stop. Basically, everything was all about, oh, could you believe that this happened? Yeah, 100,000 Palestinian victims were killed. You know, no one blinks an eye. No one thinks anything of it. And I think that that's what's basically been embedded into so many of these people's minds. As Jen, as you know, grew up in that environment where Palestinians were not regarded as human, basically.
Well, they weren't referred to as Palestinians. They were Arabs. Palestinians didn't exist. That's not a thing. That's pretend. And no, what we're dealing, I mean, this is all, you know, whether it's white supremacy or Jewish supremacy, at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about here. And so to these people in this class, and that's also a big part of it, is we know this is a class thing. People beneath them are completely expendable. That's just how they think. They don't consider it. And again, I go back to the fact that I think these are people that have sociopathy. Like this is not normal.
Because I mean, I feel like now, and it is weird because, you know, I think about like people that I know that I knew in college. And I am 47. So a lot of my, like, I'm of the generation where, you know, they're pretty freaking pro-Israel still. They're pretty, like, there's a lot of people that I knew who I liked, who are basically good people who are still defending it. And it's like, I mean, when people want to talk to me about Hamas or October 7th, it's just like, no, I'm sorry. Once you get, like, you've gotten to 100 Palestinians for every, you know, Jew that was maybe killed by Palestinians that day. Maybe they were killed by the IDF. Like, you buried all the evidence. But, like, we've gotten past this, like, 1 to 100 ratio, at which point it becomes statistically non-existent what happened on October 7th, you know?
But I don't even think that that's what it's about. I really think that there is this undercurrent still that exists, nothing like it once was, especially after 9/11. There is an anti-Muslim hatred that exists, particularly amongst affluent Jews, that they do not hide. And in their mind, it's like, you kill one, you kill them all. Because in their mind, it's partially, well, they'll kill us, or no, I think that they right.
And it's like, what, like, I don't get it. They're not Nazis. Like they're not, like, it is very odd. I don't know. It was always very strange. I never understood it after September 11th, the, you know, rabid Islamophobia that, like, was sort of, you know,
that's American, American Empire. That's American empire. You always have to point the finger at somebody. You always have to create an enemy. You have to create a scapegoat. That's how they were able to sell the Cold War for as long as they did. That's why they sold Korea. That's how they sold Vietnam. That is how they sold Grenada. Again, on and on and on we go. The only reason
the dehumanization. And, you know, my dad was in the State Department when I was a kid. So I grew up in you know, mostly in China. And Hong Kong, you know, like, I was always really, like, I always found that really just odd and unnatural. And I do think it is unnatural, right? To, like, just whole scale dehumanize, like, whole groups of people.
Sure.
But it's something that, like, but then I see, you know, right? Like, what's her name? The Michelle Obama speechwriter. You see it come so naturally to people who seem otherwise normal. And I do think that, like, in this election, I feel like, and this is why anyone talking about Gavin Newsom or anyone who's just a snake is just, no, like, people want somebody who's not evil. Like, there is so much, like, America is so dying for, like, a Bernie type figure, but, like, somebody who seems like a good person. I think fucking Norm Finkelstein could, like, be president, like, because, like, they want somebody who you know, is unapologetically moral, you know.
And we do. Yes. We want that. And kudos to Norm, who's the only person who comes out looking stellar from the Epstein files. You got to love that. I mean, no, because the truth is, people that have morals don't want to be in those positions with those people, and they're not willing to swim in the swamp that it takes to get to those positions. And that's if the machine lets them through.
I think you even see it over because I have been watching, I don't know if any of you have been watching Candace Owens. As a guilty pleasure.
Peter frequents Candace.
But my mind is constantly blown watching her show since the Charlie Kirk murder. And you do see, I see that need, like, from her commenters when she has Norm on, like, and just the way that, like, she's talking. I mean, what's so interesting about this is that it's gotten me something, or I think it's gotten America something we've never seen before, which is somebody from the right really doing a deep dive into the Christian right, like the kind of the donor stoked, hyper culty, hyper Zionist Christian right, and, like, how just unbelievable. I mean, the Jerry Falwell homes for teenage, pregnant teenagers. That was like, she's made so many detours down the Christian right, psycho realm. And I think that for people who, I think that there's a lot of people out there who identify as Christian, who have finally had it with what like Christian means in America, and in MAGA America especially. But I think that they've just had it with the hatred, with the dehumanization, with ICE. I mean, she put out a tweet yesterday that was like, I don't think Americans want to, see ICE people is shooting people in the face, and
How radical.
All these people are clinging. So Candace clings, they all cling. You go off the reservation in one realm, you really can't, you don't want to be a rhino. You have to be you have to be true MAGA. So you have to kind of keep, your immigration policy over here if you're going to go after Israel, and vice versa. But I think that I think a lot of these people, I mean, you've seen every, bro comedian podcaster who endorsed Trump back away really quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with getting involved in politics when you don't know anything. And I think that that's ultimately one of the big problems that does exist. And, part of the reason why I think Candace has staying power is, on the one hand, she's very good at what she does. She also clearly had a very, I would say, even brotherly relationship with Charlie. So for her, knowing that they came up at the same time, it is personal. And I think she fears her own mortality because she's very outspoken. She's married to a Brit who, in my opinion, is definitely connected to MI6, among other things. So she has a certain degree of independence and also security that very few others have. Tucker comes to mind, in terms of their ability to do the things that they're doing. Now, I was going to save this for Saturday, but, since you brought it up, I think it's imperative that we do address this story right now because it is top of mind, and Lord knows how many different things are going to change.
So in other words, Peter's bringing up a story that normally he covers without me because I don't normally cover other content creators, but we're going to slide this in and talk about Candace. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Yes, you'll survive. You'll be fine.
I'll live.
Who put that picture away? That's what they want to know. So Charlie's last live appearance before he was assassinated was, from his home studio at least, was on September 8th. Here is that wedding photo behind him, which you can see. Then fast forward to December 12th, and as a part of her Shabbat Shalom PR Blitz, she conducted her very first interview from Charlie's home office. She was playing the part, as you are about to see, of this is my first time back in his office. And yet, curiously, that wedding photo is missing.
I have not been in here for a very long time, and I've just been, that's part of the reason why I keep looking down. It's not because I'm not wanting to look at you, it's because there are so many treasures in here.
If this really is your first time in his office, the first time looking down at his desk, who moved the frame behind his head? The internet's immediate reaction, they said Erika removed it. But I would like to push back on that notion. I do not accept that option at all. That would be the exact opposite of the very intentional PR messaging that has come out of Turning Point USA since Charlie died. So that really only leaves us with one other option. And that option would be that Charlie himself moved the frame on the.
That's a lot of presumption.
That's
a lot of presumption.
That is, I was yesterday, I listened to this episode, and there's so many places where you're just she goes on for 5 minutes about the sleeping arrangements. Like Erika says that the 3-year-old came in at 2:45 in the morning, and then she sent Charlie to go sleep in her bed. And I'm like, yeah, that's how it works, because they get into your bed and then they go perpendicular. Don't you know this, Candace? Candace has 4
kids.
homeschools, and like she's just like a much more successful mother than I think most people. So yeah, I wasn't very convinced by this particular episode, but I do think in the totality, the evidence that she's presented, and others, I mean, she's not the only one, but like she's been on it, and she's the easiest to listen to. It presents a really obvious picture that there's just not.
Here's where I stand on this. Do I think that Candace is digging a little deeper on something where I think a lot of it just comes from personal hatred towards Erika? Yes, I think that's a big part of it. What I do think is not up for debate here is that was a wedding photo that is no longer in that studio that Erika is now occupying. There is just something very sinister about the way she conducts business. But at the end of the day, in my humble opinion, all roads lead to Israel. This is how I've always felt about the story. It's the primary reason I cover it. Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA was a response to Barack Obama's incredible run in 2008. And they had to come up with a way to cultivate the youth in some way, shape, or form. And so a bunch of conservative billionaires got together, gave this kid a lot of money, saw his oratory skills and leadership capability, and said, go out there, go recruit the young people at college campuses and create this organization. And that's what he did. Didn't work in 2012, couldn't sell Mitt Romney. He was like a wet paper bag. But eventually you had somebody like Trump, and they were able to sell him in 2016. And Charlie Kirk, especially in this last election in 24, he was responsible as anybody, and I mean anybody, when it came to getting him elected and getting that youth vote out there to get it done. And when it became more and more obvious that this was an Israel psyop and that they were never going to be able to shake it unless he made a dramatic move, which Charlie ultimately did, they decided to have their little shindig in the Hamptons and say, no, you are not going to break away from us. And if you do, then watch your back. And that's why he wrote a message to Candace that she constantly brings up saying, I understand that I'm a marked man and that I might end up getting myself killed. Now, do I think he was having this conversation with Erika? No, I don't, because I do think the more you look into it, the more it's probably that this is all for show. People really do not understand. It's like when you get to certain levels of power and influence that, again, you see it in entertainment. People have beards. They're closet homosexual, and they're married to somebody who they claim is their spouse and that they love, but in reality, it's not real. And you see, like I said, there are so many layers to this. In my opinion, Candace knows exactly what happened. She is keeping the story alive as long as she possibly can, because no one is taking any legitimate action against this. And that's
nor can they. They never can now, can they?
Well, why is
because you have no forensics, because they made sure that you're not going to be able to have a forensic report. So you've left reasonable doubt forever. Forget the fact that there's no autopsy, because, you could make that up, I suppose. But like, there's not even been an investigation in terms of the crime scene. The whole thing is ridiculous. But this is even more ridiculous for her to say that the photo not being there is a sign of something. That's silly. Quite honestly, that could be as simple as his assistant went in there and cleaned out some of the stuff that might upset her when she went in there. And I am not defending Erika Kirk. I think she's full shit. I think the whole thing is some sort of grift. But I just think that what Candace is saying right here, from an evidence perspective, is exceptionally weak.
Yeah, she definitely, this was not her strongest show. And again, the Erika, like the Erika Kirk exploration, because she didn't have anything to say about Erika Kirk until Erika Kirk hit back at her in her Barry Weiss thing. And then there was something that clicked. There was also this guy that she interviewed who claims that Erika Kirk was at Fort Huachuca. It's just another, if you don't know the whole Fort Huachuca storyline, it's a little bit complicated. But and I don't, again, we don't know actually, when you get into the mechanics of actually who did it, what's clear is that Tyler Robinson is your very classic patsy. He's very classic, what's his face? Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Ray, in terms of he was there, he had some involvement with these people clearly, but like they can't explain anything about the gun. They can't explain how he got it off the roof. They haven't really proven that like he was the guy in any of the footage. They haven't explained how 30-06 would make that particular wound and not leave an exit wound. They haven't, you know, like, and that was the other thing with the crime scene too. It was so unbelievable to watch them pave over that grass because it was, I mean, what the fuck is going on? And that was one of the things when respectable people just sort of moved on and dismissed that. I was a little surprised because number one, we know that this administration is crazy. Number two, they killed one of their own. You know, they killed one of their own, and it wasn't obviously
kind of like the Hannibal directive, right?
Yeah.
Like, but that's all assuming that he's dead. I don't know for sure that he's dead. There's no autopsy. There's no official death certificate, from my understanding. I don't know what any of this is.
Candace says she's seen the death certificate and that it doesn't say anything about the bullet.
Cause of death. Yeah.
Because first of all, have you ever heard of in your life a live assassination situation wherein no autopsy is conducted? Because I've never heard of that. That's something I've never heard of. Like I've always they just don't have one.
I mean, listen, I'll take it one step further. You go back to September 11th, the very next day, or September 12th, Erika Kirk makes that video in front of his casket. That was so inappropriate, and it felt so, even if it was his body in the casket, it felt so staged and so over the top.
It was so awful. And she is, I mean, again, her background is interesting. Her parents
are intelligence.
She's had like 12 different jobs that seem to have nothing to do with one another. She was in real estate. She lived in China. She did this Romanian orphanage thing.
Right.
It does all add up to kind of like what exactly was going on with this woman. And yeah, I mean, it seems very fake. But she's also, you know, Candace has pointed out, you know, Charlie was an extremely gifted boy, and she believes that he had like sort of handlers from an early age. Like he was sort of spotted, and you know, and certainly just the fact that he founded Turning Point at age 18 is crazy, right? And
well, did he really?
Or
did
I mean, obviously,
brothers and friends create a situation and put him in charge of it like he was groomed to be before his brain was even fully developed? I think they created him. He's like the Spice Girls.
Yeah.
And so
100%. And, you know, and that's also a really good lens through which to look at it. One of the sort of supporting characters here is these Cavalry Chapel pastors who sort of like infiltrated Charlie's life and created this turning point faith, this turning point faith component of Turning Point USA that was really working hard to get people to basically tithe to them and people to will their, you know, their whole estates to them, and was doing a lot of predatory stuff.
Well, again, it's like anything with evangelical Christianity. Everything is about money and power, and I mean everything.
Yeah,
that is all it's ever been, and
so
that's the link.
And the Calvary Chapel people, though, you know, it's just worth noting, like there's this enormous history of abuse in these chapels. It's like a very strange kind of, it's a non-denominational denomination that's decentralized, but is it really decentralized? It's not quite clear. They're always they're always getting in trouble for being very predatory. But the woman who conceived or supposedly masterminded Britney Spears's conservatorship, who also manages the Kardashians' money and also tried to get Courtney Love and Lindsay Lohan into similar conservatorships. And that story is very crazy. Well, her husband is a pastor in the Nashville branch of the Calvary Calvary Chapel. And she, she takes people to Israel to get like rebaptized. I mean, it's a huge grift. But I think that, like, those parallels are really interesting. Yes, like Charlie was absolutely, and that's what they were trying to do. I mean, that's what Candace was too, and that's why they needed to break them up, because Candace was a little too much her own person.
You also had to know that there was going to be a collision course happening at some point when Candace broke from the Daily Wire, and Lil Ben Shapiro, who is he is the spokesperson for what is, I guess, considered the millennial and Gen Z neoconservative crowd that supports the state of Israel. But what I do also want to point out that was a subset of this particular clip of Candace that I thought was extremely important here is that she's really taking it a whole step further by calling for Erika Kirk's arrest. And that, to me, I think is, now you're really moving into territory that very few people are willing to touch, which is, why have you not been questioned? Why have we not done real investigations into this? Anyone with a rational brain knows that Tyler Robinson is a patsy. You have to at least go there. So here's what she had to say.
Asking me to be an idiot, actually, and I cannot do that for you. Someone once commented beneath this show that if the situations were reversed and there were this many verifiable lies that Charlie told regarding the murder or assassination of his wife, Charlie would be in prison awaiting trial. And I actually agree with that assessment. We are way beyond coincidence. This is now a full-blown conspiracy.
Right. Like, this is absurd.
She would have been questioned. Because that's the other thing, is that there is this other player that has these motives. And like, that was another thing. So as soon when he got assassinated, I remembered, right, that Harrison Smith, this guy who works at what's his face, Alex Jones, had tweeted a month earlier, literally just like a month earlier, that Charlie Kirk was worried Israel was going to kill him if he tried to leave the fold, right? So he's like, I just heard this. This is kind of scary. I just heard this from a mutual friend, that Charlie Kirk literally thinks that Israel might kill him. And I remember thinking, because Kirk had given this, he'd put on this, whatever their annual confab is, or their summer one. Amfest with Tucker Carlson and David Smith. And that was like a little bit of an earthquake in the conservative, and then also
it was the conversation on stage between Dave Smith and
that was led to the meeting in the Hamptons.
Well, I call him the Timu Ben Shapiro knockoff. That's Josh Hammer.
That's twice.
Fair enough.
Josh Hammer, who's deeply involved in this one. And so I just remember when he got killed, I was like, holy shit, this is the guy. Because I didn't, until that, until the Tucker Carlson fest and Charlie Kirk coming out and saying, and he was trying all summer, he was trying to, like, one day he would do a super genocidal stream with that rabbi who was like there was like one of his like rabbi mentors. And I'd be like, what the fuck? And then he, or he did this one stream where he's like, I'm just not going to talk about Epstein anymore. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. But he was really anti the Iran war. And he really went out on a limb. So you could watch him trying to kind of balance these things, right? These opposing forces. And I was just like, oh my God, that guy got killed who thought that Israel was going to kill him. That's crazy. And of course, Bibi comes out before anyone even knows that he's dead.
First person.
So it's like, well, this is, and then we learn about the Hamptons retreat, which he described as an intervention because they literally came armed with a list of offenses that he had committed against the state of Israel. That's an intervention. I'm sorry. And nobody denied that it had happened or that it had been acrimonious. They denied his use of the word, intervention, but it was like, oh no, this happened. And also Bill Ackman donated $1 million, right, to finding the real killer or something. And then I think that he asked that that money be given to Tyler Robinson's family for turning him in. So this whole thing is just like, I'm sorry, like this is, how do you not go down this? How do you not go down that road?
And
like,
then you take it a step further, and the day after the assassination, where the Tyler Boyer-led roundtable in Charlie's studio had a very special guest named Ben Shapiro.
Oh my God, that's right. Oh my God.
Why? Oh my God.
You know, the headliner of the AmFest that they did afterwards. But then there was also like the
don't forget, Mo, don't forget, Shapiro sits in that studio and he guarantees, he's like, the Daily Wire is now going to give $1 million to Turning Point USA. And the next thing you know, he ends up as one of the keynote speakers at the end of the year AmFest event that they did back in December. And that's where he got confronted by a recent guest of the show, Nikki Rudd, who asked him, why do you continue to deny the history of the USS Liberty attack? And then he went into a complete Hasbara explanation as to what really went down. I have my sources. I totally know what went down. And I'm like, no, you don't, because we've had several. We have had we've had 3 surviving members of the USS Liberty on our channel. And one of them in real time basically watched him say that and said, you are full of shit. You don't know anything about what you're talking about. So to me, all roads lead to Israel. They always have, they always will. And until we sever this relationship once and for all, this is going to continue. So when people ask themselves, why does Les Wexner walk free? He walks free because he is the conduit to the relationship between the United States and Israel. It is so obvious, he couldn't make it more obvious. He's the richest man in the state of Ohio, worth over $9 billion. And how did he make his money? He made his money through a varying degrees of sex trafficking. Because let's face it, that's what a lot of operations like Abercrombie and Fitch, Forever 21, and of course, when we're talking about Victoria's Secret, I mean, what is that all about? And I bring this up because you may have heard of Mike DiSabato, who is a whistleblower and also a survivor of the abuse that took place at Ohio State. So he came out and made this little ditty of a video, which I think is very telling. You think you have problems on Capitol Hill? It doesn't stop there. This is in Columbus.
Leslie Wexner, who is part of a trifecta of sexual abuse scandals.
How you doing? Are we gonna get some justice for the survivors, Mr. T-Berry? Survivors outside, we're gonna get some justice for them. Johnson, you ever get tired of telling lies for these people? You ever get tired of telling lies for these people?
I don't tell any lies.
Where's Wexner? What's he doing today?
You'd have to ask his people.
Well, his people right there. Board Chairman John Zeiger is his personal lawyer. Where's Wexner, Zeiger? We got to get you straightened up, brother.
I don't,
you don't think it's a conflict of interest?
I speak for the university, only the university.
How is this?
I'll talk to you later. This was fun.
Mr. Carpenter, we're gonna get some justice for the survivors today.
Mr. Marshall,
I know you're.
This gentleman is here accosting people.
He's
so the guy wearing the Burberry scarf, who probably is a very wealthy, comfortable man in one of the Ohio suburbs, doesn't like being questioned about why he doesn't do his job. Mo, what is going on in Columbus, Ohio, and why is no action being taken against Les Wexner in the State House of Ohio?
I mean, he has been, how much money has he given to Ohio State? I mean, it's something like $400 million. But Wexner, he founded the Mega Group in 1991, I think. This was I think it was sort of an intelligence outfit, but it was a group of Jewish billionaires who only desire. Then they changed the name to the Study Group. And what's interesting about the Mega Group is that supposedly Robert Maxwell's, one of his code names with Mossad was Mega because he was fat. And so I like, I'm not exactly sure if the two things are related, but Wexner has been sort of at the very top of, you know, these institutions for a really long time. He's given, I think, another like $400 million to Harvard to fund to finance the you know, graduate education, Kennedy School education of hundreds of Israeli politicians and civil servants. But he had, like, there are some mega group archives are available on the internet, and you go through and you can really see how, like, how concerted there was this sense of urgency around the intermarriage crisis, and, you know, we need to make Judaism or being Jewish and loving Israel aspirational again. And, you know, he's this aspirational king, right? He creates Victoria's Secret. He creates Abercrombie and Fitch. Abercrombie and Fitch, again, like extreme white supremacy going on in that brand. And that was one of the things, like, and there is, you know, they were just obviously, they were white supremacists. They were certainly Ashkenazi supremacists. And they put enormous sums of money. I mean, they bought off everyone. And Ohio, you know, it wasn't just him, the Schottenstein family. There are other Ohio merchant families. But I have to also think that, like, this is a guy who was also very deeply embedded in organized crime. And it wasn't just Jewish organized crime. I believe that he was a lot of Italians in his corner as well. The former owner of the San Francisco 49ers, who ended up having to sell the team. So he's just, you know, I do think that, like, Ohio is an extremely corrupt state, and they're probably thinking, you know, why, you know, nah, you know, enough.
We're also, Ohio is also the worst gerrymandered Republican state in the country. Like, it is absurd how gerrymandered that state is. And we've seen, you know, again, there's comparisons for how bad it is in California, what it is now in Texas, the way it is in New York. Ohio is a state that has a lot of problems, and a lot of it is based on racial lines. If you really look at how Ohio is set up from a governing standpoint, there is no question that there is very unsightly behavior going on there. And I'm glad that DeSabato is doing this expose, and there's a few more of these representatives and senators that are just dumbfounded about being confronted by, hey, how come the richest, most powerful man in the state is a underage pedophile sex pest and has been doing this for decades, and you won't do a thing about it? Because much like the Sandusky story at Penn State, everything is connected to money and power, and this is where the rubber meets the road with capitalism. At the end of the day, everything is all about, what does this person do economically for us? Les Wexner may be one of the worst people walking the earth right now, but ultimately, Colin, bring that video back, please. It is without question, there is something to be said for what type of a commodity do you present economically in this country. You could be a rapist, you could be a sadist, you could be a masochist, you could be a serial killer, you could be a child sex predator, you could be a spirit cooker, you could be all those things wrapped into one. What are you providing economically for the United States at home and abroad? If you're doing well, we will overlook everything, and I do mean everything. And that's what this entire case is proving.
Get you straightened up, brother.
I don't,
You don't think it's a conflict of interest?
I speak for the university, only the university.
How is this?
I'll talk to you later. This was fun.
Mr. Carpenter, we're gonna get some justice for the survivors today.
Mr. Marshall,
I know you're.
this gentleman is here accosting people coming into the courtroom. This gentleman right here.
Should Wexner's name share the same line with a guy like Woody Hayes?
Well,
He also handpicked Mike Jeffries, the former Abercrombie CEO. He's been indicted.
This is Les Wexner's state senator, by the way. This
for sexual trafficking, interstate prostitution. So that's the trifecta. Wexner.
That's not good. Look, I don't have. If you, listen, I think Wexner's been tied to Epstein the whole time. What do you expect? What are you expecting?
I expect some people to talk about it, to get it in the media, to use your office. Leslie Wexner's been running around this city for 40 years, being a sex, in my opinion, being a sex criminal, and you guys act like you got no power. I put you on the spot, and I'm just a lowly county commissioner. You're one of the most powerful people in this county, brother. And you're gonna stand here and act, I'm a small bean? Don't play that act with me.
Listen, I think it's wrong. I think that this needs to come to light, and somebody's gonna step up and say, all right, this happened, and agree to it. But what's happening at the national level, what's happening here, they're hiding all this stuff. I think it's wrong.
The Wexner facility, that name was put up there with Woody Hayes, the most prestigious name in university history. $5 million donation. 2.5 came from his wife. The other 2.5 came from Jeffrey Epstein, his foundation, which is Giselle Maxwell. 2.5.
If you want to forward that to me, I'll look at it.
And I'm giving you the heads up because there's a storm coming.
Well, then that's a problem for him if that's the case.
Yeah.
Do I like Les Wexner? I barely know the guy, but do I
like
like what he's done?
Will you give his money back? Your campaign money?
He gave me money years ago.
Will you give that money back to charity?
Sure.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Isn't it amazing how cowardly these men are? These
very. Can we be done with them now? Can we be done with that? Thank you.
I do think. I mean, it does remind me of one of the most famous politicians to come out of Ohio was Jim Trafficant, the guy that Trump sort of ripped his whole
seriously past
persona, right? Jim Trafficant was a real was a real enemy of Israel, and he was extremely corrupt, super mobbed up, but he was very popular, and he was a legit populist. Like he was very anti-free trade, and he wanted to sort of clamp down on the banks during the he represented Youngstown, and he did it accurately, and he had just a whole lot of, and people were feeling, I mean, you can tell when you hear people calling up C-SPAN. I was listening to a story, like a documentary about him, and people were calling up C-SPAN to talk about Trafficant. Like when in 1982, when the steel industry collapsed, and suddenly, the unemployment rate in some of these places was like 30%, right? Like the 1930s level. And suddenly everything that they'd built their, communities on was just gone overnight. And it was, and all of these people in steel country and heavy industry country, they all voted for, if you look at, they all voted for Mondale in 1984. I mean, overwhelmingly. No one else did. No one else cared. But there is that same sense of this, just like we are like, and Wexner was one of the guys who was sort of facilitating that. Not that, we had Ohio, I don't think was a bastion of garment manufacturing. I would have to check, but like we threw away our working class. Like they threw them away. They threw them to the curb. They threw them into, like sex trafficking and drug addiction. And then, the whole milieu from which Epstein and co plucked their victims was this misery. And I think that and that's why they were mad about the immigrants, because the Great Replacement had, that theory, whatever, is not it's not without merit, right? Like, okay, you'll just, you're now you're going to import labor from countries where the family isn't completely broken down, and family where drug addiction doesn't run rampant, and where their money can go a little further because the currency, isn't, inflated the way that ours is, so there can be the reserve currency, yada, yada. Like there is an element, like I understand that I've never been, an immigration hawk, but I always have understood that sense, like, oh, I see what you're doing.
Yes.
You're just going to, like, you fucked up our generation, so now you're just going to import. And that's how these people do think, right? And again, I mean, no one represents that more dramatically than Leon Black. Some of the most troubling stuff in the file. I mean, there's so much troubling stuff in the files, right? To the point where you're like, did they leave this in so that people would, be discredited if they even talked about it, right? Some of the craziest allegations against Donald Trump, for instance.
Right.
There's one guy in there who, is especially difficult to, there's a few in there that even I am pretty sure are hallucinations, right? But at the same time, what we've seen, what we know now of how that network worked, it really does. And I think also, right, the idea, the way that they discredit these people, and Leon Black is a really good example of this, because he, one of the Russians, this is one of the very rare cases where one of the Russians in the Epstein network sued and told her story. And unfortunately, her story was a little bit, more difficult. It's more problematic because she had taken a lot of money from Leon Black over the years. And you can see at one point, Leon Black goes undercover and records her and gets her basically demanding $100 million for everything that he's put her through, and also accusing him of sending people to make fun of her child at school. And you can tell she's become unglued by her relationship with him. They were, on it, like she was his mistress for 6 years. But he also raped her all the time and treated her like crap. And
this brings everything full circle, because at the end of the day, as I always allude to on this channel, is that it's the saying that Whitney Webb has, which is, it's one nation under blackmail. All of these clandestine operations are based on this idea that there's always something in the closet that if they have to pull it out as a trump card, if you will, then they're going to pull it. I think those days are dying. Yeah. And the reason I believe that they're dying is because the American empire is dying. And when the average person is being directly affected on a daily basis, whether it's healthcare, education, income, health, or I should say the environment, and your health is being directly affected as a result of that endless war, seeing this, again, floodgates at the border, if you will, which is not based on merit, but based on a desire to suppress wages and to benefit the shareholders. This is end stage capitalism that we're living through right now. And the total denial of that reality, which a lot of people still don't want to address. It's why they don't want to address the truth about the Charlie Kirk story. It's why they don't want to address the truth about Les Wexner and what the Israeli mafia operation that has been running this nation for decades and decades. It's all coming to a head because change scares the ever-living shit out of the average person. And that's why they would rather not talk about it. They'd rather pretend it's not going on. Let's just move on, as they say. We're not moving on now. Now we've come full circle, and it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And your reporting is immensely important. What we do here, I hope, is beneficial to the people that watch and share it. That's why we do what we do. I want to thank you for obviously coming on this evening, because there are going to be many more layers to this story going forward. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There is an additional 3 million plus files that we do not know about. Who knows how much more sinister it gets? I'm sure it gets worse. And there's a reason why those names are not being redacted.
I don't think it'll matter. That's the truth. No one seems to care. It's like they can say whatever they want. There's no there's no repercussions. There's no justice. So I don't know why they hide it.
Well, they've done a great job of hiding it for a while, but I believe those days are ending because they're not fooling anybody at this point. When
and what's going to happen though? What do you think is going to happen, Mo?
I think we're heading for revolution, to be honest. I really do. I think at some point people are just going to say, you have.
No, I mean, I asked Mo, like, what do you think the deal is? Like, no matter how much they expose, it doesn't seem like it. What's the breaking point?
Well,
like,
I mean, we have a mafia regime right now, so they're not going to do anything because they don't even have, the DOJ doesn't even have any lawyers, right? They're hanging on by a thread. Every lawyer who does work for the DOJ is like, what am I doing here? The thing that we know is that one thing that sort of really touched off the worst excesses and sadism, right, was the collapse of the Soviet Union, deindustrialization, right, and the collapse of the Soviet Union really enabled them to. There's a part in one of the lawsuits against Leon Black where the woman's at it's right after September 11th, and the woman's at Epstein's house with Leon Black, and they're all talking about how desperate the models who are stranded in New York after Fashion Week are, and how they'll take it in the ass for $100. Right. And that, there are countries like Moldova. I think half of the women in Moldova, or 40% of the women in Moldova, did actually resort to prostitution in the 90s. We're dealing with, I mean, it didn't have to be this way, right? But since the Doge operation, I have been thinking that Russia's literally their model. That's what they're trying to do. They don't care what happens to our GDP. I think Trump sort of cares, but the people, the Stephen Miller, the Scott Bessent, the guys who are really in charge here, they like chaos, they like desperation. And the fact is that people are disgusted and horrified at what they have unleashed, because everyone who voted for Trump did so because they thought it was going to be like Trump won. I thought it was going to be like that. And we all knew, because Wexner was literally the second guy to come out and be like, I'm boycotting giving money to the Ivy League because of anti-Semitism after October 7th. He was it was him, it was Mark Rowan, and then maybe it was Mark Rowan, Bill Ackman, and then him. And I thought, Les Wexner, what the fuck are you doing showing your face in public, right? But he hasn't given to Harvard since some people at Harvard wrote a letter that he didn't approve of. I think that they have gone to max. The oligarch, the ethno-supremacist oligarch class has gone max, and they're they are reaching for war with Iran. No one's coming to save us. Nope. But I do think that nobody who voted for Trump is is really down with this, and I think that we have to be. I'm so glad that I found another person who watches Candace Owens, because for the longest time I felt like it was the only person on the left who did.
You found number two, so there you go.
There you go. Peter just admitted he's on the left for everybody watching.
I am on the populist left.
I do think that we have to be, reaching out to anybody who doesn't who's, because this is a gateway, Israel, understanding Israel and understanding the pedophile class.
Yes,
they see it now. They run, there's no such thing as free markets, right? That's one thing that Candace is always saying, I thought there was a meritocracy. This isn't free market. And it's yeah, no shit. No fucking shit.
That's what everyone else has been saying.
I don't know why, And, but it's better late than never.
I agree. I agree. And I think that's a great place to conclude, because the night is always darkest before the dawn. That's the bottom line. And things are getting worse, but they have to get worse before they get better. Because eventually what you're going to require for the change to happen is people are going to have to stop giving a shit. And at that point, it becomes, do you stop paying taxes? Do you bear arms? Whatever it is, it's going to be something.
Oh, we're there.
And we're there. It's not a question of if we're there. It's what's going to be the Paul Revere moment is basically what I think a lot of people are looking for at this point. Like, what is it? I don't know. Maybe
it's not one thing. I don't think it's going to be one. It's not one thing. We're seeing a series of events, a chain of events.
Yeah, maybe it's.
Have you guys? Sorry, but have you guys talked to Oliver Larkin?
Not yet.
He is primarying Jared Moskowitz.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's really good. He's really smart. He's got.
But you're saying so. He's also a foot taller than Moskowitz.
That's not the point. The point is he is he against Israel?
Of course,
that's his whole.
So that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. I think Moskowitz is going to can lose, but it won't be to another Democrat.
Yeah, the reality of South Florida is that especially Southeast Florida, it is little Israel. Is what it is. It's what it's become. Between Palm Beach, Broward, and Dade County, that is ostensibly what it is now. And not to say that the overwhelming majority of people who live there feel that way, no. But the power players, everyone who lives along, A1A.
And the people who vote. So the thing is, like, somebody like him will lose, but it'll be to the Republican, which won't. It's going to be to another Zionist.
Hey, listen, you know what? Whatever's going to get Wasserman Schultz out, which looks like the redistricting might get her this time. Okay, good. But you know what? The party politics, that's a whole other layer of conversation for another time.
Yeah.
If you think that you can vote your way out of the change that is needed in order to make this country great again.
Well, I don't think that.
Not happening.
No,
not happening.
Of course you don't.
Moe, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you and your work a lot.
Links are in the description. Make sure you subscribe to Moe's work at the American Prospect. We will be talking again soon, and see you for the revolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Moe.
Thanks, Moe. If you've enjoyed this conversation, which we hope you have, please consider going over to patreon.com/revolutionary change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty, yet still growing despite being suppressed channel. We have a big shout out to give for many people this evening. Jim Taleb kicking us off with the $5 super sticker. Thank you so very, very much. Ashton Milky Way with the $19.99. Not saying it's the exact same, but the America today has a lot of similarities to the Weimar Republic of the 20s. And we'll know, and you know what happened that next decade.
Exactly. Yes, we do know that.
So you agree. Okay.
Well, yeah, the Weimar Republic, I mean, it's the epitome of privatization and neoliberalism and capitalism. And that's right before the implosion. So yeah, and everything seems so good. Everything was so good.
Until it wasn't. And then it all fell apart.
Yes.
Alex Scott Mittens, great to see you, brother, with the $5. So because A.G. Garland protected the pedos, A.G. Blondie can do the same. Blondie's rationale, they're all in on it. Here's the one thing that I will say, and this is the one thing that is becoming very hard for this administration to recognize, and that is eventually when you're playing a game of musical chairs and you stop the music, somebody is going to be left without a chair. For generation after generation after generation, there is a reason why there were never prosecutions. There is a reason why LBJ got away with his crimes. Nixon didn't get away with his because he didn't protect
Obama didn't prosecute W. Okay, like there's a lot of this, but that whataboutism, it's obviously it's just a deflection.
For the people of today, they're looking at it and saying, no, I don't want any more whataboutism. I don't give a shit what the Democrats or Republicans did. I care about justice. And that's why Thomas Massie is a rare bird.
Wait, but you know the difference though, Peter. The difference is that Joe Biden, and I will not sing that piece of shit's praises, but that he did not campaign on releasing the Epstein files.
No.
Donald Trump campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. So for them to turn around and do a whataboutism, it falls short.
Well, we're going to look into that. We'll see what happens. Pirate Justin with the $2. How dare you question me? Yeah, she definitely has an ego. That's for sure.
Well, it's how dare you call me a liar? Because you're lying. That's how.
Alex got mittens with the $2 this time. Nixon's AG was the one that went to jail.
Thank you. Yes. That's what I was saying in the beginning. She clearly does not understand history. The lawyer always goes down. That's how it goes. She's going to be the one.
Kate 7478 with the $9.99. How is Rep. Stacey Plaskett still in Congress? It's not like she really represents anything or gets a vote. It's the same thing with Eleanor in Washington, D.C.
I don't know who Stacey Plaskett is. Where
she's
is she?
The representative of Puerto Rico, and she's the person along with
she doesn't get a vote.
Well, she was the one along with Wasserman Schultz that went after Taibbi for the files. The Twitter files.
But none of this matters because the Puerto Rico doesn't get a vote. She's a non-voting representative. Yeah, it's what's her name? Eleanor in DC.
Yeah, that's what I said. God, it's like a comedy routine with us. Willie Bragg. Well, I said it first. That's for sure.
On first?
Well, what's on second? And I don't know who's on third. It's definitely not you. Willie Bragg, always a pleasure. Guys, subscribe to the Willie Bragg Show on YouTube. Thank you for the $5. While Trump derangement syndrome was a thing, 2017 to 21, with a slightly more moderate Trump, today's fascist Trump needs to be exposed. Amendment 25 now. Yeah, good luck with that. That's
and look, and it would be, if that would solve our problems, I would be so gung-ho for that.
Tate's 4242 with the $2. PDFs kidnap Maduro for Zio State. Yeah, pretty much. No argument there. Citizen Pendejo with the 50 pesos. Pam's gone. She chose going out kamikaze mode to please Zio Hell and divert attention. Went down in a blaze of bravado over answering and incriminating herself.
Except it's gonna, and unfortunately, it won't go down like that historically, right? Like it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna read the way she thinks it's gonna read. There's nothing heroic about any of that. She's not taking the fall for them. They're hanging her out to dry. There's a big difference.
Agreed. Skedward Bowlby 9653 with the 5 Canadian A. Zionism is in every inch of the American fabric. How they are going to deal with it? Well, we're trying to deal with it now, brother. We're doing it every day. Pirate Justin with the $5. So 2 Catholic women, 1 black, 1 white, Candace and Carrie, are going to save the USA from the grasp of Zionism. Didn't see that coming. Hey, whatever it takes to get us there works for me.
Pirate Justin, it's the atheists that always end up saving everything.
And they happen to be the most Christ-like out of anybody. Isn't it interesting how it works out that way? Piano Man with the $10 super sticker. Thank you so much for your support. Alex got mittens with the $2. F Israel, foreign and domestic. Couldn't
agreed. Alex got mittens.
Aaron Wolf with the $20. Thanks for your work. Thank you for your amazing support. Alex got mittens with the $5. Thank you, Revolutionary Change. It seems we cannot say what we know due to hate for us non-Jews. May God bless you. You have Catholics watching you. And if you saw our segment regarding Carrie Bowler the other day, I'm with you on that, brother. Tony D with the $2. Jen P, you are based tonight. I thought
Tony D, you're not. You know what? Thank you so much. But I at this point, I'm going to call you a biased source because I think you just like me regardless. So I appreciate it, though. It's nice. It's nice to have somebody like me.
It's always good when somebody likes you unconditionally. You know what I mean? Okay. So for those of you who obviously caught wind of the story that TrackAIPAC got shut down earlier today, the Zionists are clearly going for broke. It is obvious that they just don't know what the hell to do anymore. But it goes without saying that their days are numbered. It is obvious that they are, because I often say that you just have to give them enough rope and they will hang themselves. And that's essentially what's been happening here. They ended up losing a substantially important congressional race Leave it to Walter Masterson, who I forget the name of the group that he's a part of. He's like this comedy duo, if I remember correctly. But he really highlights the importance of recognizing that AIPAC is not as smart and as shrewd as they think they are. So here we go.
Tried to rig the game and wound up electing one of the most anti-AIPAC candidates. Great job, AIPAC. There's a special election in New Jersey's 11th district right now. It's a very blue district. So the Democratic primary, that's the real election. Meet Tom Malinowski. He used to be a congressman. Polls had him as the favorite to win the election. Even Kalshi had him at 90%. He supports Israel. Never called what's happening in Gaza a genocide. He even took a sponsored trip to Israel. So AIPAC should love him, right? Wrong. You see, Tom Malinowski said the United States should condition its aid to Israel. And
how dare he?
How
This
dare
is a cautionary tale to AIPAC. You know, they were totally kicking and screaming after this, which is so glorious. But my understanding is that she still has another hurdle to get through.
Yes, she does have another hurdle to get through. Mejia has a primary. So this was it's New Jersey politics where I'm from, guys. So we have had wonderful guests on our show, as you know, that have dealt with the ballot line problems in the state of New Jersey. This is another example of the stupidity of why these elections in many cases make no sense. She just went through a special election, won it. Now there's going to be a primary election in June, and that one will determine who goes to the general. And yes, whoever wins that primary will win the general in November.
But people might not know the backstory to this, right? So you kind of just jumped in about it and you didn't really give the backstory. So basically, the person that would be the establishment tool dared to suggest that some aid to Israel, although he is a Zionist, mind you, some aid might need to be conditioned. Well, AIPAC jumped on him. They jumped on him like white on rice. And they went and put all their money into him. And then what happened is an anti-Zionist, pro-Palestinian, more leftist person won. So they weren't paying attention to her.
No.
They were so focused on him not being 100% on board with their genocide. And so then they went and they ended up getting her in there.
And
it's really quite beautiful, actually.
It is. And I think it also speaks to the great disconnect that these overly affluent Zio scum have when it comes to assessing the validity of a congressional race. They probably based it strictly on the fact that the polling and especially the amount of money raised, there was no way that Mejia was an actual threat to win. That's why they decided to get involved and try to push Malinowski out of the race and boost up this other guy. I think Brendan. I'm forgetting his last name right now, but I'm pretty sure that was their plan. They really they did not see this coming. Like they really.
I know, it's great, and this is honestly, it's really poetic justice. It's really perfect. Now I hope that she's able to sustain and get through whatever other primary.
My understanding is that the Dem establishment, for whatever reason, especially Mickey Sherrill, who is the new governor of New Jersey, that they are rallying behind Mejia, that she has the support of the governor, and if she does, then she's going to win. I'd be very surprised if she didn't, but you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Malinowski runs. And now AIPAC decides to get behind him because they sure shit don't want her to be representing them. It's amazing how much you can just blow through money, especially when it comes from the treasury that gets sent to Israel and that gets reverted back to our elections. We're paying for this shit. Don't ever forget that.
Not give Netanyahu a blank check. AIPAC heard this and said, hey, bro, cool it with the anti-Semitism. Then AIPAC and UDP got out the money cannon and put down $2 million in negative ads towards Tom Malinowski. But here's the problem. AIPAC can't say, oh, Tom doesn't support Israel. So they focused their ad campaign on turning him into a fake Democrat. Voters saw these ads and said, wow, he's not a real Democrat. Who else in the race is a real Democrat? Enter Ana Lilia Mejia. She's a progressive candidate who centered her campaign on the cost of living. She's backed by Bernie and AOC. And unlike Malinowski, she doesn't want to condition aid to Israel. She wants an outright ban on sending them offensive weapons. All the local New Jersey papers that said Malinowski was going to win now had to print out retractions. Kalshi has her at 99%. So AIPAC took a candidate that was mildly critical of Benjamin Netanyahu, right, and they've wound up electing a candidate who is fiercely critical of Israel. Amazing.
It's glorious. Like, you really, I mean, it's perfect, really.
Well, and not only that, but if you really think about it, he was going to win. There's no way Mejia was winning that race if those negative ads did not come in there. That's the irony of their actions. They overplayed their hand in the worst way possible. And now you're going to potentially get a true non-corporate representative in the state of New Jersey into Congress.
Let's say hopefully.
Hopefully. We'll see. They still have time to circle the wagons. And you know that if they have to pump millions upon millions of dollars saying, oh, we made a mistake, we were wrong about Tom Malinowski, and the next thing you know, he ends up having a resurgence and ends up doing very well. So I would not put anything past anybody when it comes to this race. Do I think anything is going to change? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But when you get right down to it, Jen, does it really matter?
No, because electoral politics is just, that's the circus. It's a circus. It's a distraction.
And so why do we bring this up? We bring it up because when we talk about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens having the impact on the political right, particularly the populist America First political right, that they have, when they speak, people listen. When it comes to the progressive left, when Hasan Piker speaks, people listen. That's why this commentary created such controversy in the last 2 days.
Disappointed in
Who
Gavin
do you vote
Newsom.
for, J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom?
Well, I'd have to vote for Gavin Newsom,
Me
of course,
too.
100%.
I wouldn't blink.
There's no
What
doubt.
about you, Hasan?
I'd probably vote third party.
There it is. See, these two people just revealed exactly who they are. If you are still voting the lesser of two evils, you are missing the entire point of the problem. You're not getting it. You're just not getting it. And then what you're doing is you're wasting all of your time trying to do something to then just go right back into the problem. Why? That's cowardice. It's also, I would say, at least in these people's parts, total privilege. This is an extremely privileged person right here.
Jennifer Welch is the lady that we've talked about. This is the woman who had a show, I believe, on Bravo, which was some type of I think it was like a home restoration program out of Oklahoma City.
I don't remember her, and I'm like an HGTV like regular.
Well, this is the lady that I pointed out with her podcast partner was so gleeful about going to the Democratic convention in Chicago. Didn't say a word about the Palestinian protesters outside.
She's a shill. So continue this.
Yeah.
Let's get through this.
You would?
Oh yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter. Like, because my policy on this is the same as like my refusal to endorse Kamala Harris. The reason why I did not endorse Kamala Harris was because she did things that were not only unproductive, but also unconscionable. And I still stand on that. I still talk about it all the time because people constantly bring it up. They're like, you didn't sufficiently like promote Kamala Harris. You're the reason why she lost. And I'm like, I am incapable. There is no singular force in this country that is capable of making or breaking an election. And if that was real, then it is the most idiotic thing not to listen to my demands. But everybody knows that that's not real, right?
Mm-hmm. They always have to have a scapegoat. And the one thing that does not change when it comes to the Democratic Party is this, ladies and gentlemen. The Democratic Party primary is rigged. It is rigged from top to bottom, not just at the presidential level, but at all levels. That's how the party maintains its fiefdom. That's how somebody like Debbie Wasserman Schultz still sits in Congress. Do you think for 1 second that a party unlike the GOP, the party in question, the Democrats, have super delegates? Do you think that they're just going to arbitrarily give those up? Do you think they're getting rid of their safety valve? That if, God forbid, any candidate, and let's be fair, even if it's AOC or Ro Khanna that is going to run in the progressive lane, they are, with all due respect, paperweights. They will crumble like a cheap suit when push comes to shove. They are never going to outright say the United States as a whole must do away with the state of Israel, that capitalism is broken and can't be fixed. Heck, Ro Khanna does insider trading through his wife. And I think Ro's done a decent job as of late. But this is not about friendships. This is about being honest about our situation. And our situation, as Hasan Piker is putting it, is, honestly, I don't give a shit who you put up on the Democratic side. The Democratic
it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Yeah, please let this play because it's late and yeah. It's late.
If I had this singular force to be able to make Kamala Harris the president, then Kamala Harris should be coming to me every day and being like, let me do a collab with you, please.
Totally.
Right? That's not the case, of course. And they know it. That's why they didn't do it. But the campaigns are always responsible for whether or not they are able to win the crowds, win the population over, and you know, combat against the couch. Not necessarily even against the Republican Party, but usually you're fighting against the couch, people who just don't go out and vote. And for me, the way I see it is if the Democratic establishment makes this decision one more time, just as they did with Hillary Clinton, just as they did with Kamala Harris, and in some ways, just as they did with Joe Biden as well, which led to Trump too, then they just don't care. And there's not much I can do.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. I agree with everything you say, but as a person who lived in a red state for 50 years, I would crawl through 10 feet of concrete to vote for Gavin Newsom, even though I think he's duplicitous, a hypocrite, a thirst trap, hungry for power, all of the things that you say.
But I'd crawl through concrete to vote for him. The only thing you left out there, dumb bitch, is we don't have him on pederast charges yet. But maybe you should add that to your mix and you'd still crawl through concrete to vote for him. What a privileged bitch. I hate when you make me watch this shit.
On top of everything else, Gavin Newsom has been in charge of California and San Francisco for a combined, 15, 20 years? You mean to tell me that he hasn't had people protected that have been to the island, that he hasn't been taking money from the very factions that are involved with the U.S.-Israel relationship, or that all of what is breaking our entire system is responsible? Again, this presumption that Gavin Newsom is the nominee, this is the presumption because the Democratic establishment has already decided that Gavin Newsom is the person they're getting behind. That's Nancy Pelosi's nephew. He is from the
Sort of, but still from the elitist class. It's the elitist. Facilitate this, please.
It harms the Democratic Party and sets the psychological soil to be more prey to fascism. All of that I agree with. But there are so many young, queer, black, brown, marginalized people in red states.
This lady is so, and what's even more amazing, Jen, is that this is a woman who is being featured prominently by the Democratic Party establishment as a primary voice to be.
So why do you think? How is it that anybody would think she's any different than the Pod Save guys or the Midas Touch guys? She's on the payroll for the Democrats.
And she's the quintessential wine mom, which is who the party caters to in the first place. They do not cater to working people at all. They cater to very affluent, comfortable suburbanites like her. That's who they're trying to appeal to.
And this is why they will continue to lose until they are non-existent. This is why, because people like her, and this is a seemingly less offensive white woman than others, but it's people like her that are the reason why we can't have nice things. And she doesn't even know it. She thinks that she's helping the situation. She really does. This is a vagina hat wearer.
Oh, yeah.
She thinks she's helping the situation. Instead, she's being condescending and elitist and not doing anything to help the situation. But she believes that she knows better from her privileged position to tell other people that in some way that would benefit her, Gavin Newsom is more palatable than the alternative. Think about, like, in what way would that be? Again, only that he hasn't been brought up, as far as I know, in the Epstein files. I don't see how anything separates him from any of these other pieces of shit.
Well, the other thing that I really wish people would understand is that they're still doing the thing. They're doing the, the thing. They're doing
No, I don't know the thing. I know that she is a tool for the Democrats. That's what I know.
My point is that they're doing the thing that they always do. The presumption already 3 years out that Gavin Newsom is not only the nominee, but that you have to vote for him. And not only do you have to vote for him, you have to concede everything to him. You cannot make any demands. You are just going to crawl on hot coals and broken glass to get to the polls and vote for Gavin Newsom, because somehow, some way, we might get stuck with J.D. Vance, who's probably exactly the same.
Noah, no opinion. You guys should invite her onto your show. She means well. She might mean well, Noah. She might. I don't think I'm quite the hand holder that she might need. And I'm thinking that I might not be exactly the right person for that job. We're not soft and friendly here. I have very little tolerance for elitist people, and especially white women. I just do. It's like fingernails on the blackboard just listening to her.
And I am going to say something, and I'm going to be very clear about this. If you go to the roughest and toughest neighborhoods in the United States, red state, blue state, it doesn't matter, where the people are struggling the most, that this white savior is talking about, who do you think runs these communities? These are almost 1,000% Democrat run. That is a fact. This is not up for debate. And the fact that she talks like this because she doesn't like the fact that she lives in a state like Oklahoma, hey, that's your choice. And I agree that Oklahoma is a state with maybe some of the darkest history in our nation's, in the history of our nation. When you think about it, Oklahoma's really bad, especially in terms of what they did to the natives of this country, in terms of what they do as far as fracking is concerned. Oklahoma.
I am now in Marjorie Taylor Greene's former district. Okay. I understand what it's like to be somewhere red. And it's actually quite nice when you're not a condescending elitist like her.
And this is also, and you also take it a step further, and why the shift that has happened between the two parties is so distinct. The Democrat, as I said, the Democratic Party establishment, their first priority when it comes to their voting base, they claim that it's for the black vote. No, their first priority is the white, liberal, suburbanite, urban dwelling voter.
Because that's who comes out and votes consistently.
And has money.
Yes.
Has money. And that's it. That's all that matters to them.
Right, finish it up. Finish it up with this one.
And even though this corporate Democrat is, you see it in a long-term game. In the short-term game, a President Newsom over a President J.D. Vance.
Is what, lady?
What?
What do you think that would be? Say it with your horsey face. It wouldn't be different. You just would feel better. You would feel more comfortable in your estate. You would feel good in your little privileged bubble, because then you would feel that things are good again, because somebody that you consider to be more civilized is now doing all of the shit. They're just doing it with a smile on their face, and they look a lot more suave doing it. And maybe he's not a sex couch person. I don't know, but it's still not going to, really? See, this is where that woman is not, I cannot take her seriously now.
This is the problem that you have to understand, because what people are failing to recognize is that Hillary Clinton is a sociopath. I'm not saying that Gavin Newsom is a sociopath, but here's what I can assure you, that whether she's in office or Gavin Newsom is in office, there is going to be very little difference, and I mean very little difference between the two. So when you say, I regret voting for Hillary Clinton, do you regret voting for Joe Biden? Because we saw what Joe Biden unleashed on this country.
So wait. She says she regrets voting for Hillary over Bernie.
No,
is that what we're seeing?
I don't know if that.
means?
I need more context in that. I don't know for sure if that's the reason or not. But at the end of the day, they're always going to revert back to what they know best. They will be defiant. They will say that they're not going to do something. Maybe a candidate will come along that entices them for a little while. But when you get right down to it, this is why people prefer the GOP to the Democrats, because in the GOP, they allow their people to decide who their nominee is in every single race.
Even when they don't like it and they go with it. But coming to the conclusion now, again, so now what you're saying is she is the epitome of these people that I've been speaking of that in 2016 would not get behind the actual person that we had a chance to beat Trump with, right? Exactly. She wouldn't get behind him then, but she'll get with Bernie now. So she is exactly one of those types of libs that was all pro-Hillary and now finally realizes, maybe Bernie was the compromise. Too late, bitch. Too late. That ship sailed. So now she's with Hillary or with AOC and Bernie. And the problem is that group of people like her is too small now, because the people that were with Bernie, like us, we're not there. We're not waiting for you. We stopped waiting for you. We're now left of you. And so now you're standing there holding what you think is progressive, except for there's a handful of people there that just recently hung up their vagina hats. Yeah, no, that's not going to help us, lady. You're too late. We're on to something else now.
And we're on to a point where if you are not speaking of revolution in some context as a national figure, then get the hell out of the way. What else could you possibly expect in a system that is breaking at the seams? People don't believe in the system anymore. And you're asking them, no, Ron, I think Ron was communicating with somebody in the chat.
No, he's just in general. I'm incorrect. Lesser evilism is precisely what has kept pushing things further and further to the right. Yes, encouraging the ruling class to go even. Yes, that's why voting of the lesser evils is actually useless. There's no point. You're still pushing the window further to the evil. So what difference does it make? Again, anybody who says they regret voting for Hillary, but is now saying they would vote for Gavin Newsom, she learned nothing. If she were one of my children, she'd have to probably write a report about her decision as to why I'd be giving her an assignment like I used to give to Reese when
if Jennifer Welch was not an op for the Democratic establishment, and listen, give kudos where it's due to Hasan Piker for making that statement. But the one thing I will say about Jennifer Welch, if she was not an op for the Democratic establishment, you know what she would do? Because she has a lot of influence. She has a podcast with over 1 million subscribers, and it's boosted and pumped by the Democratic establishment, which we know would end the second that she got out of line. But let's just assume that she had even an inkling of an independent streak in her to actually do the right thing. If she came out and said, if the Democrats do not become a radical, populist, anti-Israel party, I think I'm going to have to vote for the Green or the Libertarian Party, because at least there I know it's much more likely that that's what's going to happen. That's
so Team Mac Divine, Peter, we do not need gossip. These are not revolutionary topics. While I do agree with you, one of our jobs here, like I said before, is media literacy and explaining to people who's compromised, why they're not reliable, who they're in bed with, and trying to build coalitions with the people that we are on the same team with. So while it does seem gossipy, I think it's important for people to know that these so-called newly woke, I shouldn't have voted for Hillary, they really still don't get it. They still don't get it. They're just simply trying to feel better about where we are right now and be like, okay, I get it now. Too late.
So let's talk to our resident Black friend of the show who is in Las Vegas. Remember, the Nevada primary the Nevada caucus is a pretty consequential caucus. It comes at the beginning. You have a big say in who ends up as potentially as the nominee, or at least gets the momentum. what you end up doing and saying, well, maybe because Newsom is the best choice at the moment, who's better? Well, first of all, Newsom is not a good choice if you know anything about his record in California. And number two, there's going to be, I mean, if we're being realistic about how many people are going to run in the Democratic Party for president in 2028, what would you venture, Jen? At least a dozen people are going to do it. You're going to have at least 6 or 7 governors that are going to do it. Andy Bashir, possibly, who I think in terms of a milquetoast, leaning left, not as corrupt governor that you could find, and he represents a red state, he's probably the best option. I have to really see him in the...
All right, hold on a second, because I have to get people under control in this situation, because at the end of the day, what people are bickering back and forth about this thing with Jennifer Welch is that she's against Israel, she's for Palestinians, so we're not going to agree on everything. That's fine. That's great. That's great. But at the end of the day, if she is ushering people back into the duopoly, then all of the other stuff doesn't matter, because it will never get taken care of that way. So it really doesn't matter if she is anti-Israel, if she is still going to usher people back into the duopoly that is completely controlled by the Zio state. So her having good intentions, it's like she's willing to put her neck out a little bit, but if it gets a little too scary, I'm coming right back. That's not it.
Not going to work. It hasn't before. It won't now. And how many different ways to Sunday can the party show you that you will get screwed in the end and that no revolutionary change is coming? You are never going to get single-payer healthcare. You are never going to get universal education. You are never going to get a clean environment. You are never going to get the end of the state of Israel. You are never going to have the ability to drink clean water and have clean air. You are never going to have an economic system where your dollar is worth what it should be worth. You think that's going to happen in the Democratic Party? We are we have been past the point of revolution for over a decade. When Bernie Sanders was screwed out of the nomination in 2016, and he was screwed out of that nomination, that was the time when revolution needed to happen. We have been kicking the can down the road for a decade, past that point. That point where it was obvious we needed to change. We were not willing to go for it. And people that are trying to like come to the party now they're way too late. And not only are they too late, they're still trying to figure out a way to get you back in. They're still trying to play that game.
Problem. Right. So this isn't agree to disagree.
They're playing that game. And I could give you a myriad of reasons why you shouldn't go with it. Just remember this one rule above all other rules. They have super delegates in that party that are all part of the corporate special interest establishment. And they have one rule and one job. Ensure that whoever is the nominee is part of that class. That's it. That's their job. And if Gavin Newsom is the person, this is why they're already talking about him. This is why the Neera Tandons of the world are putting out the word. Gavin Newsom's the nominee. Don't get in our fucking way. Have everybody out there, including Jennifer Welch, who pretends like she's not part of the establishment, suggest that, he's really not what I want, but I will crawl over hot coals and broken glass to vote for him.
What the fuck? And David Hunter is correct. She's controlled opposition. And that would be, and for me, that would be generous. Yeah. That would be generous. Mm-hmm. So I understand and we've said it before, it isn't just about being against Israel. It isn't even just being against Israel and being pro-Palestinian. You don't get to just say those things and then support everybody going back into the system that perpetuates that oppression. That doesn't work. That's why she will now be labeled as a controlled opposition. Because that's not serious. So I can't take her seriously, and neither should anybody else. And just the fact that she's right on some issues, a lot of people are right on issues. So if I'm right on a shit ton of issues, but at the end of the day, I tell you to do what's completely against what I'm right about on all those issues, what good is that?
Good point. And last thing, do you have time for one more quick?
No, I don't. And it's time to move on. It's now 10, almost 10.
Thank you all for your amazing support tonight. I had a little bit more that I wanted to get to, but
Peter has big eyes, small stomach sometimes.
No, I have a big stomach.
Big eyes, small stomach. Like what you say about someone who get the buffet and they fill up the plate, but then they can't really eat the whole thing. That's like him.
That's me.
That's you with content. That's you with content.
Libertarian social dem with the $4.99. The only way to de-Ziofy Florida, give up South Florida and support right libertarians like Aaron Baker. Is the only way. And Texas is more Ziofied. Well, here's the thing. Florida is more Jewish Ziofied and Texas is more Christian Ziofied. That's a fact. So yes, but either way, you're still stuck with Zionism and we have to end it. That's the goal, or at least end their control over our lives. And finally, Alex Scott Mittens with the $10. If I vote for pro-life, I'm screwed. If I, God forbid, vote for pro-death, both parties have the same master. Jews.
I don't like that, Alex.
Killers, two sides of the same coin.
It has nothing to do with the fact that they're Jews. And I would also suggest, as somebody that has been watching our show and apparently likes our show, that you maybe consider taking the women's reproductive issue out of your voting equation, considering you probably don't have a uterus. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking you don't. And therefore, I think that maybe you should table that issue and look at the bigger picture for right now. That's my recommendation.
I would do the same thing. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. Jen's hungry, so let's let her go. We love you all. We appreciate you all. I'll see you Saturday.
And free Palestine. Free Palestine.